Chapter 205. Xiao Chen's expression turned even uglier. You can go back by yourself. I'll go play with Yin Xiao. Jing Yu shook off Xiao Chen's hand and turned to leave. Stop right there. Xiao Chen's expression changed, and he suddenly reached out to grab Jing Yu's arm. What are you doing? Jing Yu was really angry. She hated interacting with people like this the most. He clearly didn't want to come out, but he still agreed to come out. It was fine if he came out, but he still had to pull a long face as if she owed him millions. Jing Yu simply couldn't tolerate it. If you want to see flowers, I'll take you somewhere else. Xiao Chen took a deep breath and looked around at the chaotic streets. He really couldn't find the slightest bit of interest. Where are we going? Jing Yu blinked and asked. Follow me. Seeing that Jing Yu had relented, Xiao Chen slowly let out a sigh of relief. He led Jing Yu out of the streets, mounted his horse, and extended his hand to Jing Yu. Jing Yu looked at Xiao Chen, who was looking at her with his hand outstretched. After hesitating for a moment, she still extended her hand to Xiao Chen. The two of them rode together and sped towards the edge of the imperial city. There was a tall mountain there. Jing Yu was protected in Xiao Chen's arms. Just like that, they bypassed the crowded main road and arrived at the foot of the mountain. Here? There's nothing here. Jing Yu blinked in confusion as she looked at Xiao Chen, who was tying up the horse, and said, Let's go up. Xiao Chen saw that there was almost no one here and slowly let out a sigh of relief. He held Jing Yu's hand and climbed up the mountain step by step. Along the way, she looked at the lush greenery and Jing Yu's mood also calmed down. On the way up the mountain, Jing Yu was bouncing and jumping, which made Xiao Chen smile. Xiao Chen, you should smile more. Jing Yu looked at Xiao Chen's gentle smile and said, Look, he looks so good when he smiles. Xiao Chen didn't say anything, but the smile on his face deepened. We're finally at the peak. Jing Yu sat on the stone steps, panting. She looked at Xiao Chen, who was not blushing at all. She glared at him and said bitterly, Why are we all walking, but nothing happened to you? I have internal energy, this is nothing. Xiao Chen raised his eyebrows. Jing Yu's face stiffened as she stared at Xiao Chen and said, So you're saying that you can use your qin gong to fly up? Indeed. Xiao Chen thought for a moment and nodded slowly. Oh my God. Why didn't you tell me earlier that you have qin gong? You made me walk so much. Jing Yu jumped up and looked at Xiao Chen accusingly. I saw that you were walking happily, so I forgot about it. Xiao Chen said indifferently. Jing Yu was stunned by Xiao Chen's words. She was roaring in her heart. Which eye of yours saw that I was walking happily? I'm so tired that I'm about to collapse. Jing Yu glared at Xiao Chen bitterly. Her angry face was especially cute. Xiao Chen pulled Jing Yu's hand and said, Didn't you want to look at the flowers? Come with me. After saying that, he held Jing Yu's hand and walked into a small path filled with branches. The two of them walked through the tree-lined path, and a light appeared in front of them. Their vision suddenly opened up, and the wild chrysanthemums that covered the ground were exposed to Jing Yu's eyes. Jing Yu stood at the exit of the path and looked at the beautiful scene in front of her in shock. How did you know about this place? Jing Yu's eyes were filled with the colorful wild chrysanthemums and the butterflies dancing among the flowers. Chapter 206. This scene was like a painting. Jing Yu was stunned. I found it by accident. Xiao Chen narrowed his eyes and smiled comfortably as he looked at the scene in front of him. It's so beautiful. Jing Yu ran over happily and looked at one flower, then another. Xiao Chen looked at Jing Yu's actions and his eyes flashed. He walked slowly to a patch of grass and sat down. He leaned against the grass and narrowed his eyes as he looked at Jing Yu. Xiao Chen, look at the garland I made. Jing Yu smiled as she ran towards Xiao Chen with an exquisite garland in her hands. Xiao Chen nodded with his eyes narrowed. For you. Jing Yu put the garland on Xiao Chen's head without hesitation. Suddenly, the cold-faced man turned into a flower fairy. Jing Yu burst into laughter at his comical appearance. Xiao Chen silently moved the flower that was blocking his eyes away. However, he didn't take off the garland on his head. He looked at Jing Yu, who was laughing so hard that she was about to burst out in laughter, and a gentle smile appeared on his face. How dare you humiliate this king? I think you're tired of living. Xiao Chen smiled as he spoke these words lightly. Jing Yu saw that Xiao Chen's posture was not right, so she immediately turned and ran. Xiao Chen looked at Jing Yu, who ran away like a wisp of smoke. He smiled evilly and chased after her. Ha! You can't catch me? Jing Yu ran quickly as Xiao Chen chased after her unhurriedly. Looking at Jing Yu's proud face, Xiao Chen suddenly chased after her. Jing Yu cried out in surprise. Before she could react, Xiao Chen caught her in his arms. The two of them fell down the hill and rolled into the sea of flowers. Xiao Chen protected Jing Yu's head with his hands and stopped them from falling. Where do you think you're going now? Xiao Chen's lips curled into a dangerous smile. Jing Yu stared at Xiao Chen blankly. She could feel Xiao Chen's palm behind her head. In this situation, all Xiao Chen wanted to do was to protect her. Did he not care about his own hand? Xiao Chen. Jing Yu bit her lips and looked at Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen narrowed his eyes and looked at Jing Yu, who suddenly stopped smiling. Do you like me? Jing Yu stared at Xiao Chen with her bright black eyes and asked. Xiao Chen, do you like me? This voice was like a curse that exploded in Xiao Chen's head. Xiao Chen's body trembled as he stared at Jing Yu's face. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The surroundings were silent, and only their breathing could be heard. Ha! I've been fooled. Jing Yu suddenly pushed Xiao Chen away and ran away. Her arrogant words sounded like she was cheering for being able to escape from Xiao Chen's restraints. Xiao Chen was pushed to the side by Jing Yu. He supported himself and looked at Jing Yu, who ran away. His lips curled into a helpless smile, but his eyes were filled with complicated emotions. Under Jing Yu's laughter, Xiao Chen stood up and brushed off the weeds on his body. Jing Yu seemed to have said those words just to deceive Xiao Chen. After that, Jing Yu didn't say a word about what she had just said. She continued to play by the side until the sun gradually set. The two of them lay on the grass and looked at the orange-red sky peacefully. I have to go out to do something in 2 days. Xiao Chen rested his head on his arm and said indifferently, I might not be back for a month. Chapter 207. Xiao Chen rested his head on his arm and faintly said, I might not be back for a month. That long? Did something happen? Jing Yu tilted her head and looked at Xiao Chen as she asked. Nothing big, just some things that I need to personally take care of. Xiao Chen raised his hand to pat Jing Yu's head and said, Xing Er will stay in the manor. If there's anything, just tell Xing Er. Also, while I'm away, you have to take good care of yourself. All right, I definitely won't starve to death. Jing Yu unhappily swatted away Xiao Chen's hand as she spoke. I'm afraid that while I'm away, the emperor will summon you into the palace. Xiao Chen sat up with a heavy expression and said, If that's the case, you have to tell Xing Er before you enter the palace. Isn't it just entering the palace? It's fine. Jing Yu waved her hand as she spoke. I'm afraid that someone will take advantage of my absence to harm you. Xiao Chen slowly exhaled and said, Just remember my words. Oh. Hearing this, Jing Yu's eyes flashed slightly and she slowly nodded her head. My jade pendant is with you, right? Xiao Chen suddenly asked. Jing Yu froze for a moment and didn't react to Xiao Chen's words. She looked at Xiao Chen with confusion, her eyes full of questions. Did she have a jade pendant? The first time we met, in the forest, I dropped the jade pendant, Xiao Chen said faintly. I remember now. Jing Yu's eyes widened in realization. She blinked and said, I seem to have taken that jade pendant to hang around Yin Jian's neck. Later Yin Jian dropped it, and then, I don't remember where I put it. Jing Yu looked pitifully at Xiao Chen and swallowed. I'll go back to the manor and look for it immediately. It's in your dressing box. Xiao Chen looked indifferently at Jing Yu and said, Wear this jade pendant at all times and don't take it off in the future. But what's the use of this jade pendant? Jing Yu asked with confusion as she blinked her eyes. It can protect your life. Xiao Chen stood up and said, It's getting late, let's go back to the manor. Oh. Jing Yu looked at Xiao Chen, who didn't want to talk, and furrowed her brows, but she didn't ask any more questions. Jing Yu, no matter what he said, she still didn't want to go down the mountain. She wanted to make it up to Xiao Chen to make up for the difficulty of the climb. So, She wanted to ask him to carry her down the mountain. Xiao Jing. This speed, it's simply amazing. Jingyu was shocked as she stepped on the ground. It was still the most comfortable to step on solid ground. She raised her head and looked at the mountain peak. The feeling of reaching the foot of the mountain in the blink of an eye was too good. Xiao Chen, teach me Qinggong. Jingyu suddenly said excitedly to Xiao Chen. You want to learn? Xiao Chen unbuckled the horse and frowned as he looked at Jingyu. Yes, yes. How long would it take for me to be able to fly down like you? Jingyu's dark eyes were shining brightly. With your constitution, you should be able to reach it in 30 years. Xiao Chen looked at Jingyu from head to toe and said, What? Jingyu looked at Xiao Chen in horror. She was shocked. Sure enough, TV shows were all lies. Those martial arts experts were all fast masters. She actually needed 30 years. She would be old by the time she finished studying for 30 years. Forget it. If I want to fly in the future, I'll let you carry me. Chapter 208. Forget it. If I want to fly in the future, I'll let you carry me. Jingyu immediately gave up on the idea of learning Qinggong. Xiao Chen's eyes flashed with a smile as he brought Jingyu all the way back to the palace. After playing around for a day, Jingyu was exhausted. After washing up, she lay on the bed without moving. Xiao Chen returned to his study to handle some matters. According to Xiao Chen, he was about to leave the capital and had many things to take care of. Jingyu had never interfered in this aspect, so of course, she wouldn't say anything. The next morning, Xiao Chen set off on his journey. It's the 10th again. Jingyu stood at the entrance of the palace as she watched Xiao Chen's carriage disappear into the distance. Her brows slowly furrowed. Last time, he disappeared for 3 to 4 days. This time, he left for a month. Jingyu had a stomach full of questions. She didn't know why Xiao Chen would leave at this fixed time every month. After Xiao Chen left, the palace completely became Jingyu's world. However, Jingyu didn't have time to play around. Although the matter of the restaurant was settled, the brothel matter had yet to be settled. The reason was simple. Jingyu was renovating the brothel. Halfway through the renovation, she ran out of money. In the restaurant, Jingyu sat in her room with a distressed expression. This was an independent room with an exquisite design. This was also a room that Jingyu had built for herself. The furnishings were of a modern European style. Boss, young Master Fong is here. Just as Jingyu was at her wit's end, Shen Yuqing suddenly knocked on the door and bowed slightly to Jingyu. What is he doing here? Jingyu mumbled and waved her hand to invite him in. Little Yu. Fong Zicheng smiled as he stepped into Jingyu's room. Don't disgust me. Jingyu rolled her eyes in disgust at the way Fong Zicheng addressed her. She said, Young Master Fong, why don't you take care of your Jinyan house? Why do you come to me? Are you trying to steal my skills? You're treating me like an outsider. Fong Zicheng poured himself a cup of tea and said, That restaurant belongs to Lord Jiu, and you are the 9th imperial concubine. Aren't we family? What's there to talk about secretly learning from others? Jingyu stared at Fong Zicheng and said, He is him, and I am me. We can't be confused. Fine. I knew you'd say we're not married again. Fong Zicheng put down the teacup and said, Jiu Yi threatened me before he left. If I let you get hurt in the slightest while he's gone, he'll skin me alive when he comes back. Jingyu said with a smile, Oh, it's good that he'll skin you alive. Anyway, your skin is thick enough. There's still another layer. Go. Fong Zicheng stared and said, I'm just here to see if you're hurt in the slightest. Yes, I'm hurt very badly. Jingyu looked at Fong Zicheng as if she was about to cry. Ah? Fong Zicheng was shocked. He quickly looked at Jingyu and said, Are you hurt? Jingyu pointed at her chest and said, I don't have any money. My heart hurts, it's hurt. Fong Zicheng's mouth twitched. He stared at Jingyu speechlessly and sighed helplessly. He didn't know what to say. As time passed, the relationship between the two became much closer because of Xiao Chen's existence. Chapter 209. Do you know what makes the most money? Jing Yu leaned on the table and stared at Fang Zicheng. Robbery makes the most money, Fang Zicheng said unhappily. Huh. Jing Yu was slightly stunned. Then, as if she had thought of something exciting, she slowly straightened her body. Her eyes shone with an unknown light. Her greedy and excited look made Fang Zicheng's eyes widen. Hey, you can't be serious, right? I was just saying. Fang Zicheng looked at Jing Yu in horror and said, Hee hee. Jing Yu didn't say anything. Her creepy laughter made Fang Zicheng's hair stand on end. What are you doing? Fang Zicheng looked up at Jing Yu, who suddenly came close. He swallowed his saliva and asked, You definitely didn't say it out of the blue. Jing Yu looked at Fang Zicheng with a sneaky smile and said, Hurry up and tell me, did you hear the news from somewhere? Is there a large amount of money to rob? Jing Yu, you can't be serious, right? Fang Zicheng stared at Jing Yu. Nonsense. Who's joking with you? Hurry up and tell me. Jing Yu narrowed her eyes and looked at Fang Zicheng dangerously. If Ninth Master finds out, he will. Fang Zicheng looked at Jing Yu pitifully. Don't worry about what Ninth Master will do. If you don't tell me, I'll ask someone else. Jing Yu suddenly stood up and was about to run out. Hey, wait. Fang Zicheng hurriedly stopped Jing Yu. If Jing Yu ran out to ask someone else and exaggerated the story, Jing Yu would really dare to rob him. If she didn't understand the situation clearly and made a mistake, he, Fang Zicheng, would really be skinned alive by the 9 emperors. That's right. Hurry up and say it. Jing Yu sat back in her seat again and said to Fang Zicheng with a smile. I just heard the news that the Grand Tutor brought back a golden Buddha statue from the Nanli state as a birthday gift for the Empress Dowager. Fang Zicheng carefully said, This golden Buddha statue is as tall as a person and weighs dozens of tons. It's said that it requires 8 people to carry it. Oh my god, this Grand Tutor is way too rich. Jing Yu's eyes widened as she looked at Fang Zicheng in horror. That's right. I heard this news from a friend. It said that Grand Tutor Fu Yen hired dozens of martial arts experts to escort the goods. He even hired people from 2 escort agencies to protect the goods. Don't even think about it. Fang Zicheng waved his hand at Jing Yu and said, If that's the case, then all the more reason to take action. Jing Yu's entire body was riled up. Do you want to die? Fang Zicheng opened his eyes wide and said, If Lord Jiao was here, then it would be fine. But you're just a girl who doesn't know anything. What can you do? Whatever Xiaoqun can do, I can do too. Jing Yu raised her chin arrogantly and said, Do. Fang Zicheng stared at Jing Yu and asked helplessly, He has 2 escort agencies to escort him. What do you have? Me? I have Xing Air. Jing Yu smiled. Fang Zicheng stared at Jing Yu and didn't hear anything else after Jing Yu said that. He stared at her and asked, And then? And then? And then there's you. Jing Yu smiled and patted Fang Zicheng's shoulder and said, Oh right, why don't you call Jing Lang over and we'll do it together. How about we split the profits 50-50? Chapter 210. Oh right, why don't you go and call Jing Lang over? Let's go and do something. How about we split the profits 50-50? Dash. Fang Zicheng looked at Jing Yu as if he was looking at an idiot. In the afternoon, Fang Zicheng and Jing Lang were both sitting in the restaurant. When Fang Zicheng went to invite Jing Lang, he thought that Jing Lang would refuse. He didn't expect Jing Lang to come over without a second thought when he heard that Jing Yu had something to do. This initiative made Fang Zicheng depressed for a long time. I say, when did you two become so familiar with each other? I remember that not long ago, you ran away when you saw Jing Lang. In the private room, Fang Zicheng stared at Jing Yu and Jing Lang gloomily as he asked. Meddlesome. Jing Lang glared at Fang Zicheng, then turned to Jing Yu and said, Why did you call me over? You even called me you. Tell me, what did you two do behind my back? Fang Zicheng suddenly widened his eyes and glared at the two of them. Fang Zicheng, you're so annoying. Jing Yu glared back at Fang Zicheng and said, Say one more word and I'll throw you out. You too. Fang Zicheng's expression changed. What was going on? He was the one who befriended Jing Yu first. How did he become an outsider? Ignore him. Jing Lang glanced at Fang Zicheng indifferently. His pitch-black eyes were filled with complacency. Fang Zicheng felt a burst of pride when he saw this. He glared at Jing Lang and Jing Yu as they discussed the matter of the Golden Buddha. Jing Lang was shocked by Jing Yu's words. He looked at Jing Yu in shock and asked, "You want to rob the Golden Buddha statues?" "I've been bored recently, so I thought I'd just go and have some fun." Jing Yu's voice was a little low. She suddenly felt a little guilty after being stared at by Jing Lang, and even her voice became softer. "Nonsense. How am I going to explain this to the 9 emperors if something goes wrong?" Jing Lang glared at Jing Yu, his eyes filled with displeasure. "Such a big gold Buddha statue, there must be a lot of people who want it. Let's go and take a look. Maybe we can even benefit from it." Jing Yu lowered her head and muttered, "You wish." Jing Lang frowned and said, "This matter is of great importance. I have to discuss it with my father." "It's not a big deal." Jing Yu pouted and said, Anyway, I'm going. I'll bring Yin Jian and Yin Feng with me. There won't be any problems." "That won't do either." Jing Lang frowned in disapproval. "But, I say." Fang Zicheng looked at the two of them talking back and forth. He frowned and said, "Why do I feel like there's something wrong with the relationship between the two of you? Jing Yu, when did you become so obedient?" "It's none of your business." Jing Yu jumped up when she heard that and glared at Fang Zicheng unkindly. The contrast between this and when she faced Jing Lang was too big. This made Fang Zicheng even more suspicious. Could it be that Jing Yu was having an affair behind the 9 emperors' back? Fang Zicheng suddenly widened his eyes in shock. He stepped forward and separated the two of them without saying anything. "What are you doing?" Jing Yu looked at Fang Zicheng, who was in the middle, and blinked as she asked, "Ahem, nothing. You guys can continue." Fang Zicheng smiled gently. His fox-like smile almost made Jing Yu slap him. Chapter 211. Fang Zicheng smiled warmly. His fox-like smile almost made Jing Yu slap him. Crazy. Jing Yu scolded him out of the corner of her eyes. She continued to talk to Jing Lang. "Give me the route and the number of people. This is settled." Jing Lang's expression changed slightly as he glared at Jing Yu. When he saw how stubborn Jing Yu was, he shook his head helplessly. He thought to himself that he had to properly prepare for this. He could not afford to make any mistakes. Xing Er was shocked when he heard that Jing Yu was going to rob the gold Buddha statues. He immediately sent someone to send a message to Xiao Chen. However, just as the message was sent to Xiao Chen, Jing Yu and Fang Zicheng were about to take action. "What are you doing here?" At the foot of a mountain outside the city gate, Fang Zicheng looked around and asked Jing Yu in confusion. "Of course I'm here to find my Yin Jian and Yin Feng." Jing Yu arched her eyebrows and smiled. She skipped into the mountain and whistled. The sound of the whistle reverberated through the forest. 2 gray wolves dashed towards Fang Zicheng and Jing Lang under their astonished gazes. They had heard that Jing Yu was raising 2 gray wolves, but they never had the chance to see them. Today, they finally got to see them. They didn't think that the matter of raising gray wolves was true. "With these 2 big guys, you guys can relax." Jing Yu smiled as she rubbed Yin Jian's head and said, "Even if we can't get a share of the loot, we can still escape." They really are 2 big guys. Fang Zicheng's eyes were full of amazement. Speaking of which, this was the second time he had met the 2 gray wolves. The first time they met, the gray wolves seemed to be drunk, and when they were being carried back to the palace, Fang Zicheng happened to bump into them. "Let's go." "Where are we?" Jing Yu looked at Fang Zicheng and asked. "Go to Chengsang Road and wait." Jing Lang's expression was slightly strange. He narrowed his eyes at the 2 gray wolves, then raised his eyes to look at Jing Yu's eyes. A deep look flashed across his eyes as he pursed his lips slightly and spoke. "All right." Jing Yu didn't notice Jing Lang's strange behavior. She nodded and sat on Yin Jian's back as they walked down the mountain. 10 miles away from the city was Chengsang Road. It was the only turning point on the official road and the best place to set up an ambush. In order to avoid being noticed, Jing Yu and the others didn't take the main road. Instead, They took a detour around a lonely mountain outside the city. Thanks to you, I was able to find such a secret path. Fong Zicheng sighed as he climbed the mountain. I only found out about this when I was climbing as a child. After so many years, I didn't expect this path to still exist. Jing Lang looked at the path and reminisced. Fortunately, there is such a path. Otherwise, with these two big guys being so ostentatious, it would be troublesome if they walked on the proper path. Jing Yu looked at the two gray wolves at the front with a smile in her eyes and spoke lightly. Jing Lang and Fong Zicheng responded indifferently. Along the way, Jing Yu and the two gray wolves seemed to get along very well. Jing Yu could actually understand the sounds made by the gray wolves, and the gray wolves could actually understand human language. This made Fong Zicheng feel very curious. How do they understand your words? Fong Zicheng moved closer to Jing Yu and asked. If you live with them for a long time, they can also understand your words. Jing Yu curved her eyebrows and smiled. This is a feeling, not a hearing. Chapter 212. It's a feeling, not something you can hear. Fong Zicheng was slightly dazed as he watched Jing Yu run a few steps. The two gray wolves seemed to understand each of her casual movements. They played with Jing Yu and went around a mountain pass to the top of Deshang-Grang Road. Standing there, they could clearly see the situation of Deshang-Grang Road. It seems that the escort team hasn't arrived yet. Jing Lang narrowed his eyes and looked into the distance. Let's rest first. I'll go check out the situation. Jing Yu nodded. She knew that now wasn't the time to play around. She called the two gray wolves to her side and narrowed her eyes to look at the road below. There weren't many people coming and going on this road. They had to go through a mountain pass to reach the official road. Jing Yu raised her head slightly and looked around. The tranquility made Jing Yu's mouth curve. The more tranquil it was, the more she felt that there was something different hidden under this tranquility. Fong Zicheng, where's my bow? Jing Yu looked sideways at Fong Zicheng and asked. Fong Zicheng took off the bow from his back and handed it to Jing Yu. He looked at Jing Yu's small body in disbelief and frowned. Can you draw it? Jing Yu snorted coldly and took the bow from Fong Zicheng's hand. She raised her hand and drew an arrow, aiming it at Fong Zicheng. She suddenly drew the bow and pointed the cold arrow at Fong Zicheng. A murderous intent flashed in her dark eyes. It did not seem like she was joking. Fong Zicheng's eyes narrowed. He looked at Jing Yu pointing the bow at him and swallowed hard. What do you think? Jing Yu slowly released her hand and looked at Fong Zicheng with a smile. As expected of someone chosen by the 9 emperors. Fong Zicheng sighed. The smile on his face didn't change. His gentle and indifferent look made Jing Yu roll her eyes in disdain. When Jing Lang returned, he happened to see this scene. His eyes flashed slightly, and the long sword in his hand unconsciously tightened a little. He watched as Jing Yu turned her back to him. Her petite body was like a cold plum tree standing on the cliff, blooming alone. She was cold and arrogant, but he knew it. How is it? Jing Yu turned around and asked Jing Lang when she heard footsteps behind her. I didn't find any traces of other people. They shouldn't be on this mountain, Jing Lang said as he stood beside Jing Yu. Just you wait. Jing Yu curled her lips and sat cross-legged on the ground. She stroked the smooth fur of Yin Jian and Yin Feng beside her. Time passed by slowly. Finally, a large carriage came from afar on the Chungtsang Road at a leisurely pace. Jing Yu's expression froze. She stood up and narrowed her eyes. The large carriage had a large box tied up and was being pulled by 2 horses. The wheels of the carriage left deep marks on the road. It was obvious that the things in the carriage were very heavy. This is a bit troublesome. Jing Yu squatted down and looked at the entourage. She roughly estimated that there were about 50 people. Each of them held a sword in their hand and wore 2 types of clothing. They were probably from the 2 escort agencies. It's the Long Gate Escort Agency and the Flying Tiger Escort Agency. Jing Lang's expression also became serious. He pursed his lips and said, These are the 2 largest escort agencies in the Jianghu. They have always been like fire and water. I didn't expect Fu Yan to be able to bring these 2 agencies together. Chapter 213. These are the two largest escort agencies in the pugilistic world. They've always been like fire and water. I didn't expect Fu Yen to be able to bring these two agencies together. Those two leading men are the escorts? Jing Yu frowned slightly as she looked at the two men riding at the very front. Both of them had different zhang hues hanging on their arms. They should be the zhang hues representing the escort agency. No, those two are the escort leaders. Jing Lang slowly shook his head and said, even the escort leaders have been mobilized. Let's just watch and not join in the fun. Jing Lang grinned as he looked at Jing Yu. Since we're already here. Jing Yu narrowed her eyes and smiled. Let's just watch first. Just as Jing Yu and Jing Lang were talking enthusiastically, Fang Zicheng suddenly came up and looked at the situation below. He narrowed his eyes and said, why do I feel that these escorts aren't as simple as they seem? What do you see? Jing Yu was slightly taken aback as she looked sideways at Fang Zicheng and asked. Fang Zicheng frowned and didn't say anything. He narrowed his eyes and sized up the slowly approaching caravan below. The escort's gazes and movements were all conveying information. Everyone was paying attention to the situation around them, except for one person who didn't move at all. On the carriage, there was a man wearing a gray robe driving the carriage with his head lowered. His sword was beside him, wrapped in cloth. It looked like it had never been drawn before. Fang Zicheng stared at the man carefully, paying attention to the movements of the people around him. So that's how it is. Fang Zicheng's eyes slowly lit up. What did you find? Jing Lang's expression slowly turned serious. Others might not know Fang Zicheng, but as his good friend, Jing Lang knew that Fang Zicheng wasn't a simple character. If I'm not wrong, there should be a head escort leader hiding in this caravan. Fang Zicheng's lips curled into a brilliant smile as he looked sideways at Jing Lang. That was clearly a smile, but it inexplicably made one tremble all over. Head escort leader? Jing Lang's whole body trembled as he continued to watch with narrowed eyes. Look at the man driving the carriage. He doesn't reveal his weapon. No matter how bumpy the carriage is, he sits very steadily. The people around him seem to be paying attention to the movements around them, but the way they look at that man is obviously different. He's definitely not an ordinary person, Fang Zicheng said lightly. This is going to be troublesome. Jing Lang frowned. Head escort leader. Fang's T-Tess. Do you know martial arts? Jing Yu, who had been listening for a long time, suddenly turned to Fang Zicheng and asked. T-S-C-2. I can only hold him back. It's not quite possible for me to win, Jing Lang replied, slightly taken aback. That's enough. Jing Yu, to smile. She turned her head to watch the movements below. Her eyes moved slightly. Just as she was about to continue speaking, she suddenly saw a commotion in the forest on the opposite side of the road. Loud shouts were heard, and the caravan below abruptly pulled the reins of their carriages. The bodyguards drew their swords one by one. Jing Yu stared in shock at the people surging out of the forest. She hadn't expected so many people to be hiding in the seemingly quiet forest. Since they were quite a distance away, Jing Yu, Jing Lang, and the others didn't move. They continued to watch the movements below. Chapter 214. From a distance, Jing Yu and Jing Lang didn't make a move and continued to observe the situation below. Can you tell who the people below are? Jing Yu turned her head to look at Jing Lang and Fang Zicheng. Disorderly and undisciplined. Their martial arts aren't good either. They definitely aren't from the military, nor are they men of sacrifice. They don't have any sect insignia, nor are they from the Jianghu. They're just a bunch of bandits, Fang Zicheng said calmly, his tone full of disdain. So this big group of people is just cannon fodder? Jing Yu's mouth twitched as she looked speechlessly at the one-sided battle below. Sure enough, as Fang Zicheng had said, these were just bandits. They were no match for the escorts. Only the leaders seemed to be very powerful. Jing Yu half-squatted and watched with interest. She thought that the battle would be over soon, but she didn't expect that it would give her a big shock. Fang Zicheng, you're mistaken. Jing Yu pouted as she looked at the leaders below. They were suppressing the two dart leaders. Their sabers and spears were wielding with vigor, giving off the illusion that they were fighting enemies on the battlefield. Fang Zicheng was also surprised. He looked at the leaders of the bandits and frowned in confusion. He looked at Jing Lang and said, "Look at those martial arts moves. Don't they look familiar?" Jing Lang slowly frowned and said, "Those are moves that the soldiers in the military usually practice. Could this be the work of someone from the military?" "I don't think so." Fang Zicheng shook his head and said, "These people are obviously undisciplined. With so many people attacking without any strategy, they won't be able to steal anything and will instead attract the attention of the soldiers. When that happens, the losses will outweigh the gains." "According to what you said, how do you explain those soldiers?" Jing Yu raised her eyebrows and looked at Fang Zicheng. "They must have been soldiers. As for why they became bandits, how would I know?" Fang Zicheng shrugged and said, "Don't think about it. The soldiers have already been attracted." Fang Zicheng pointed to the side of the road as he spoke. "They're really here." Jing Yu clicked her tongue. These bandits really didn't know how to plan. After such a long battle, how could they not attract the attention of the soldiers? "Let's go. We're just here to watch the show. Don't even think about the gold Buddha statues," Fang Zicheng said with a smile. "Too sullen." Jing Yu pouted and looked at the gray wolf at her feet. Her eyes turned as if she had thought of something fun. "Jing." Fang Zicheng and Jing Lang looked at Jing. "Jing. Silver arrow, silver wind. Go." Jing Yu waved her white hand, and as soon as her tender voice fell, the two gray wolves flew down the mountain under Jing Lang and Fang Zicheng's dumbfounded gazes, and headed towards the caravan that was in full swing at the foot of the mountain. Jing Yu snorted and took out an arrow. He slowly pulled the bow in his hand and pointed the cold tip of the arrow at the man in the gray shirt who was sitting on the edge of the carriage. The killing intent in her heart slowly rose. That pure and unreserved killing intent emerged in Jing Yu's eyes. Jing Lang and Fang Zicheng were shocked by Jing Yu's aura. They unconsciously took a small step back and looked at the woman who was standing with the bow drawn in shock. Chapter 215. Jing Lang and Fang Zicheng trembled in fear at Jing Yu's imposing manner. They subconsciously took a small step back and stared in shock at the woman standing with her bow drawn. The outcome of the battle below was already set. However, just as the bandit was about to be defeated, two gray wolves suddenly leaped out from the mountains. Their ferocious fangs and sharp claws tore at the people from the escort agency. Everyone was so shocked that they almost jumped out of their skin. The bandits were also frightened by the two gray wolves. Just as they were preparing to defend themselves, they realized that the two gray wolves seemed to understand human nature. They actually chose to bite the people from the escort agency while avoiding the bandits from the bandits' side. When the bandits saw this, they were immediately overjoyed. Their spirits were lifted and they immediately began to fight. The two escort leaders were entangled by the gray wolves and were extremely anxious. They turned their heads to look at the man in the gray shirt who was still sitting on the carriage. Their eyes were filled with anxiety. They clearly wanted the man to attack, but the man didn't move at all. It was as if he was frozen in place. In a corner where no one could see, the man in the gray shirt had a bean-sized drop of sweat trickling down his forehead. The man's heart was filled with fear at the murderous intent that was locked onto him like a venomous snake. He had roamed the Jianghu for decades, and this was the first time he had been forced into such a state. He didn't even dare to move under the murderous intent. He could almost see it. The person in the dark, the person's cold eyes and the murderous arrow tip aimed at his throat made him swallow his saliva slowly. Head escort. As the soldiers gradually approached, the two escort leaders who were entangled by the gray wolves finally couldn't take it anymore and shouted loudly. With this shout, the man in the gray shirt who had been quiet all this time suddenly leapt up. He swiftly drew the large sword beside him and waved it forcefully in front of him. Clang! The cold arrow brushed past the edge of the large sword and slashed across the shoulder of the man in the gray shirt, causing blood to spurt out. The man in the gray shirt rolled off the carriage from the force of the impact. He abruptly raised his head and looked in the direction of Jingyu. Amidst the dense forest, one could see a petite figure and a pair of eyes that were glowing with a dark green light. Abnormal pupils. The gray-robed man's entire body froze on the spot. He looked in that direction with eyes filled with terror. When he blinked again, there was no one there. It was as if nothing existed. The tightness in his heart did not dissipate. The rhythmic whistles that echoed through the mountains rang out. Roar! The gray wolf stopped moving and raised its head to howl. It slapped away the people blocking its way and quickly leaped into the forest. In a few moments, it disappeared without a trace. When the bandits saw that gray wolf had escaped, they didn't stay any longer. They scurried into the dense forest in an instant and scattered. The escort agency's men didn't know where to go even if they wanted to. In addition, the escort agency's men had suffered heavy losses. They didn't have the manpower to leave the edge of the carriage. Head escort. The two escort leaders, who were in a sorry state, hurriedly went to stand beside the gray-clothed man. Their hearts were filled with shock as they watched him stand up while holding onto his bleeding shoulder. I'm fine. The man's face revealed that he was in his 40s. At this moment, the shock in his eyes had yet to fade. He looked in the direction from which the arrow had been shot. His heart was still filled with lingering fear. He frowned and shook his head at the two men. What happened just now? The two escort leaders looked at the wound on the man's shoulder and asked. Chapter 216. What happened just now? The two bodyguards asked as they looked at the wound on the man's shoulder. The gray-robed man shook his head and didn't say anything. After a while, the soldiers finally arrived and cleaned up the mess. After checking that the Buddha statue wasn't damaged, they slowly let out a sigh of relief. What happened on Qingcang Road quickly spread among the people outside the city. By the time Jingyu heard the news, she was already in Qianlai restaurant. She couldn't help but feel disgusted at the speed at which the news spread. Such a big matter actually took half a day to spread to the imperial city. Jingyu had already washed up and was sitting in the restaurant eating delicious food. Fang Zicheng and Jingyu were sitting opposite her and staring at her. I say, how long are you two going to stare at me? Jingyu rolled her eyes helplessly and glared at the two in front of her. The two continued to stare at her without saying anything. I'm impressed. Jingyu wailed and said, didn't I just shoot an arrow? Is there a need to make you so surprised? There was a complicated look in Jing Lang's eyes. He wanted to say something but didn't know what to say. Stop, this matter is already over. We didn't get the Buddha statue. Jingyu stood up and looked at the two. Today's matter was just a show. If there's nothing else, then let's go home and find our mothers. Miss, I'm tired and want to go home. Jingyu stood up and walked out, leaving Jing Lang and Fang Zicheng dumbfounded. They looked at each other and sighed helplessly. Jingyu sat in the carriage and leisurely returned to the palace. Jingyu didn't know if it was just her imagination, but Xiaochen wasn't in the palace and it made Jingyu feel very lonely. Jingyu stayed in the restaurant every day and went to bed after washing up at night. When it was deep into the night, Jingyu hugged her blanket and slept soundly. The candle flame in the room flickered slightly, and a faint cold wind blew. A pair of black boots landed on the smooth floor, and they walked towards the bed with extremely light steps. The approaching figure stretched out a slender finger, as if wanting to reach out towards the sleeping Jingyu. As the hand approached and was about to touch Jingyu's cheek, the originally closed eyes of Jingyu suddenly opened and her body shot up. Tisk! A pitch-black dagger was placed under her fair neck and was about to slit it in the next second. Who is it? A fierce glint flashed across Jingyu's eyes. Her pitch-black eyes strangely flashed with a dark green luster in the dark night, but it disappeared in an instant. Little beauty, this young master came to give you something out of the goodness of his heart. Is this how you treat me? A familiar voice sounded and Jingyu's hand, which was holding onto the man's shoulder, paused. The murderous look on her face dissipated. Hellion Theo? What are you doing in my room in the middle of the night instead of sleeping? Jingyu released her hand and slowly moved the pitch-black dagger away from Hellion Theo's neck. She stood up and stared at Helly and Theo with a frown. Her eyes were filled with confusion. "You're too heavy-handed." Helly and Theo stood up straight and raised his hand to touch his neck. His eyes flashed with fear as he looked at Jingyu. At that moment, he thought that his life was about to end. That sense of danger made Helly and Theo's heart tremble. Chapter 217. That sense of danger made Helly and Shio's heart palpitate. Serves you right. Jingyu sat on the bed and yawned. She looked at Helly and Theo and said, "Tell me, why did you barge into my house in the middle of the night?" "Here, your pet." Helly and Theo took out a bamboo tube from his sleeve and threw it at Jingyu. Jingyu hurriedly caught it and suspiciously opened it. She looked inside and then poured out the thing inside. "Ah!" Jingyu looked at the thing on the bed in horror. Wasn't that Zonghua who had been missing for a long time? "Helly and Theo, how did you torture my Zonghua?" Jingyu poked Zonghua's petite body. Zonghua didn't move at all. Jingyu immediately went berserk. She stood up and angrily glared at Helly and Theo with her hands on her hips. "In order to ensure the safety of this young master, I gave it some sleeping pills. Don't worry, it didn't die." The corners of Helly and Shio's mouth curled up into a sinister smile as he said with a smile, "You're crazy." Jingyu spat out these 4 words through gritted teeth. She raised her hand and held Zonghua in her hand with a pained expression. "It's just a snake." Helly and Theo shrugged nonchalantly. Jingyu's body stiffened. She lowered her head and put Zonghua down. She picked up a black dagger and walked towards Helly and Theo. Jingyu's actions stunned Helly and Theo. Before he could say anything, he saw Jingyu suddenly place the dagger in front of him. Jingyu slowly raised her head and stared at Helly and Shio with her cold black eyes. She said coldly, "Isn't it just a human life? Why don't I kill you?" Helly and Theo's pupils constricted. He could clearly feel the cold, murderous intent in Jingyu's eyes. She didn't hide it at all. It was so pure that no one could underestimate her murderous intent. "Get out." Jingyu coldly looked at Helly and Theo and spat out these 3 words. A profound look flashed in Helly and Shio's eyes. He wanted to speak, but when he saw the resistance in Jingyu's eyes, he pursed his lips tightly, took a step back, and turned to leave. Jingyu looked at Helly and Shio's back as he left, and only then did she put down her arm. Jingyu turned and walked towards the bed. The moment she walked in, she saw Zonghua looking up at Jingyu. Jingyu stopped in her tracks and looked at Zonghua apologetically. She pursed her lips and said, "I'm sorry, I couldn't protect you." SSSS. Zonghua stuck out his tongue and shook his head. "Are you blaming me?" Jingyu carefully reached out her hand and tried to get closer to Zonghua. Zonghua looked at Jingyu's hand and hesitated for a moment. He bent down and touched Jingyu's fingertips. Then he retracted his hand. Jingyu blinked and looked at Zonghua. Zonghua also looked at Jingyu. When he realized that Jingyu didn't retract her hand, he mustered up his courage and went closer. Jingyu didn't reject Zonghua's touch. She moved her fingers slightly and caressed Zonghua's body. SSSS. Zonghua stretched his neck and looked very happy. Then he coiled his body around Jingyu's arm. "I won't forget about you next time." Jingyu looked at Zonghua's affectionate behavior and smiled. She raised her hand to play with Zonghua's head and said solemnly. Jingyu's mood instantly improved upon Zonghua's return. The next morning, she brought Zonghua to the restaurant. These days, Jingyu didn't dare to relax at all. She only felt more at ease when she saw the endless stream of customers. Chapter 218. Only when she saw the endless stream of customers did she feel much more at ease. But today, when Jingyu went to the restaurant early in the morning, she realized that the people who usually tried their best to squeeze into the restaurant actually took a detour around the entrance. Jingyu noticed this and was immediately puzzled by Jingyu's actions. "Xing did you notice that there's something wrong with the people around us?" Jingyu frowned and asked Xing. Xing also frowned and nodded when he heard Jingyu's question. "Let's go in and take a look." Jingyu narrowed her eyes and turned to walk into the restaurant. The moment she walked in, Jingyu's expression changed. The exquisitely decorated restaurant was now in shambles. The tables and chairs were smashed into a mess. Broken plates and bowls were everywhere, and there were a few people lying on the ground. Jing Yu naturally recognized these people. They were wearing the restaurant's special clothes and were personally selected by Jing Yu to maintain order in the restaurant. But now, her people were covered in footprints and lying on the ground with bruises all over their faces. What happened? Jing Yu's face darkened. Boss, you're here? Shen Yuqing only reacted when he heard Jing Yu's voice. He hurriedly walked over to Jing Yu and slightly turned his cheek, as if he didn't want Jing Yu to see the large palm print on his swollen face. Who did this? Jing Yu's anger was rapidly rising. Boss, it's all my fault for not being able to protect the restaurant. Shen Yuqing's eyes were filled with self-blame. Go and close the door. Come up and tell me the details. Jing Yu took a deep breath and turned to speak to Shen Yuqing. Then, she walked up to the second floor. When Shen Yuqing finished tidying up and walked into the private room, he saw Jing Yu sitting expressionlessly on the chair. Boss. Shen Yuqing bowed slightly to Jing Yu. Sit down and talk. Jing Yu nodded slightly and gestured for Shen Yuqing to sit down. After Shen Yuqing sat down, she asked, What happened? Tell me. We have to start from 10 days ago. Shen Yuqing deliberated for a moment and said, When you open a restaurant on this street, there will be people coming to collect protection fees. You have to pay this fee for the restaurant to continue operating. When I opened the restaurant in the past, I paid a lot of protection fees. Protection fees? Was it collected by the government? Jing Yu frowned slightly and asked. No, there is a ruffian on this street called Wang Matzi. He is the tyrant of the Eastern Street and is extremely arrogant. He is also on good terms with the government official and has countless subordinates. He comes to harass ordinary people like us for no reason. Every time, we have to give him enough money and face to send him away. Shen Yuqing slowly said. Before our restaurant opened, that pockmarked Wang came once, but I sent him away with some kind words. Now that the restaurant has opened, I've paid quite a bit of money. I didn't expect that pockmarked Wang would see our restaurant's high profits and ask for more money every time. He's also come more often. Shen Yuqing's eyes flashed with anger. This restaurant is the owner's blood, sweat, and tears. It had just started to make a profit, but it was plundered like this. How could I bear it? Yesterday, that Wang Matzi came again. I was unwilling to take out the money, so he left at that time. Today, at dawn, when our restaurant just opened, Wang Matzi brought people in and smashed the restaurant. He was the one who beat up the people? Jing Yu's expression was calm, as if there was no fluctuation in her emotions. Her words were also very calm. Chapter 219. So he was the one who hit you? Jing Yu's expression was as calm as ever, and her words were incomparably calm. Yes. Shen Yuqing lowered his head in shame and said, Pockmarked Wang's subordinates are all street ruffians. Even if the shop's employees worked together, they couldn't beat them. We could only watch as they smashed everything in the shop. Boss, this is all my fault. If I hadn't offended pockmarked Wang, things wouldn't have turned out like this. Shen Yuqing's eyes were filled with guilt. He stood up and knelt before Jing Yu. What are you saying? Jing Yu quickly waved her hand to help Shen Yuqing up and said, I didn't know about such a big thing. It's my dereliction of duty as the boss. Don't worry, everyone won't be beaten up for nothing. Boss, don't be rash. Pockmarked Wang has many subordinates. If we offend him, then I'm afraid our restaurant won't be able to continue operating on East Street. Shen Yuqing hurriedly said. Don't worry, I won't offend him. Jing Yu faintly tugged at the corner of her mouth. Shen Yuqing looked at Jing Yu with some confusion. He didn't understand what Jing Yu wanted to do. Could it be that she wanted to spend more money to curry favor with pockmarked Wang? It seemed like this was the only way. Thinking of this, Shen Yuqing sighed deeply. His heart was very uncomfortable. Go tell pockmarked Wang that the boss of Have Money wants to talk to him. Jing Yu said to Shen Yuqing with a faint smile. When Shen Yuqing heard Jing Yu's words, he knew it was as he thought. He responded and left. When he walked out of the door, he sighed. His heart was filled with exhaustion. Jingyu sat back down and silently looked out the window. Xing Er stood beside Jingyu and frowned slightly. He was thinking about what Jingyu would do tomorrow when Jingyu suddenly turned her head to look at Xing Er and asked, "Is there a good bao in the palace?" Xing Er paused slightly before nodding. He looked at Jingyu with some confusion. He didn't know why Jingyu suddenly asked about a bao. "Let's go home and practice archery." Jingyu arched her eyebrows, stood up, and walked away. After Jingyu returned to the prince's mansion, she really did ask second Xing to find a bao. Standing in the lotus garden, she knocked the bao and shot at the thick tree trunk. From the initial 1 arrow to the subsequent 3 arrows all hitting the target, this short duration of 2 hours made second Xing, who was waiting by the side, extremely terrified. Jingyu nodded in satisfaction and smiled. She handed the bao in her hand to Xing Er and said, "Take good care of it. Tomorrow, take it to the restaurant." When Jingyu finished speaking, she unhesitatingly turned and entered the room. She didn't care that Xing Er was standing there with a shocked expression. Why was she going to the restaurant with a bao? Did Jingyu want to use this bao to scare those ruffians so that they wouldn't dare to come and cause trouble again? Xing Er looked at the longbow in his hand and frowned slightly. The next morning, Yin Xiao was about to go into the room to wake Jingyu up. She was just about to raise her hand when the door opened. Jingyu stood in front of Yin Xiao dressed neatly. Yin Xiao was stunned for a while before she bowed in greeting. "This servant will help imperial concubine wash up." Yin Xiao bowed slightly to Jingyu. Jingyu nodded and washed up. Xing Er was already standing outside the palace. Jingyu looked indifferently at Xing Er before entering the carriage and heading towards the restaurant. The main door of the restaurant was still closed. Jingyu entered the restaurant from the back door. Chapter 220. Jingyu glanced at Xing Er indifferently before entering the carriage and heading towards the restaurant. The restaurant's main door was still tightly shut. Jingyu entered the restaurant from the back door. When Wang Matzi arrived, he saw the tightly shut main door of "Have money come." His lips curled into a cold smile as he shouted for his men to break down the door. His arrogant appearance attracted countless passers-by and spectators, who all looked at the restaurant as if they were watching a show. Inside the restaurant, Jingyu stood in the corridor on the second floor. When she heard the sound of someone breaking down the door, she raised her hand slightly to signal the people below to open the door. The moment the door was opened, 5 to 6 robust men swarmed in. Their fierce-looking bodies were truly frightening. "Ha! Where is the owner of Have Money Come? Are you here to give me money?" The leader of the group was a robust man with some pockmarks on his face. He looked around with wide eyes and as if he had sensed something, he raised his head and discovered Jingyu's existence. "Oh, you even sent a girl. Ha!" Wang Matzi looked at Jingyu with wide eyes and suddenly laughed out loud. "Ha!" The men who came in with Wang Matzi all laughed out loud when they heard these words. Their lustful gazes landed on Jingyu's body. Jingyu calmly looked at the group of people who were laughing arrogantly below. She raised her hand and picked up the longbow at the side. She leisurely pulled out an arrow and knocked it on the longbow. She aimed at Wang Matzi and slowly pulled the bowstring open. Jingyu's actions fell into the eyes of Wang Matzi and his men, causing their expressions to change slightly. "Little girl, who are you trying to scare with that broken bow of yours? Do you really think that we brothers are so easily frightened?" Wang Matzi stood up and stared at Jingyu's posture of raising the bow as he laughed mockingly. "That's right. We brothers aren't easily frightened. Shoot if you have the ability." The other person also laughed out loud. Jingyu was only 14 years old. Holding such a big bow was not intimidating at all. Moreover, Jingyu was a girl. Everyone relaxed their vigilance and began to mock her. Shen Yuqing, who was standing at the side, awkwardly touched his ear. If the person holding the bow was Xing Er, there would be some deterrence. But to let a 14-year-old girl hold a bow, there was no deterrence at all. "I don't believe that you dare to shoot in front of so many people." Pockmark Wang sneered at Jingyu and said loudly, "Little doll, come down obediently. Big brother will take good care of you." "Ha!" Pockmark Wang's lewd laughter echoed in the restaurant. Everyone in the restaurant was furious. "Close the door." Jing Yu narrowed her eyes and suddenly said. The two servants below were stunned for a moment before they ran over to close the door of the restaurant. Wang Matzi and the others looked at the closed door and were stunned for a moment. Clearly, they didn't know what it meant. What, are you shy? Pockmark Wang said as he laughed and took another step forward. Jing Yu's lips curled into a sneer. The cold tip of the arrow was pointed directly at Pockmark Wang. Her eyes narrowed and a green light flashed in those pitch-black pupils. Pockmark Wang and Jing Yu looked at each other. That green light was like a curse, causing Pockmark Wang, who had just taken a step forward, to stiffen. A chill crept up his back. Chapter 221. A look of horror flashed in his eyes. Before he could exclaim with his mouth wide open, the cold arrow in Jing Yu's hand had already loosened. The arrow with the intention to kill almost penetrated pockmarked Wang's throat without any hindrance. Chi! Everyone was silent. Closing the door was to not frighten others. Jing Yu slowly lowered her hand, and cold words came out of Jing Yu's mouth. Murder! The burly men who followed Wang Matzi in were dumbfounded as they looked at Wang Matzi, who had fallen to the ground with a loud bang. Wang Matzi's face was filled with fear and disbelief, and his mouth was wide open as if he wanted to say something, but he couldn't. 3 arrows were shot consecutively, and the 3 burly men who were the fastest to reach the door were all shot to death. The remaining 2 men looked at the 3 men who had died in front of them, and their legs went soft as they knelt on the ground. Their bodies trembled, and they couldn't utter a single word to beg for mercy. Jing Yu pulled out 2 more arrows and aimed them at the 2 men who were kneeling on the ground with faces full of fear. The lips of the 2 men trembled, and they actually lost control of their bowels due to fear. Jing Yu's eyes flashed with disgust, and she didn't hesitate to release the arrows in her hand. Open the door and throw them out. Jing Yu expressionlessly placed the bow in her hand on the table, and after saying this, she turned and left. Throw them out. Shen Yuqing was stunned for a while before he found his voice again. He wanted to raise his hand to call for help, but he found that his hands were trembling badly, and even his legs were weak. He could only hold on to the railing on the 2nd floor to stabilize himself. The onlookers at the restaurant's entrance stretched their necks to look at the closed door, and they could vaguely hear the movements coming from inside. Their hearts were full of curiosity. What exactly happened inside? The door was closed, and they couldn't see anything, but looking at the movements inside, could it be that a fight had broken out again? The stewards of the restaurants on the street all had a gloating look on their faces. For more than a month, Rich Guy had been too arrogant and had taken away all the business in their restaurants. Now that he had finally provoked pockmarked Wang, they were afraid that they would not be able to get any benefits. Thinking of this, smiles appeared on the faces of the managers of the restaurant. Just as everyone was guessing, the tightly shut door of the restaurant finally opened under everyone's expectations. One by one, people were thrown out, scaring everyone into retreating one after another. After throwing the people out, the door was closed with a bang. Only then did the crowd look at the people who had been thrown out. When they saw Wang Matzi, who had turned his head to the side with a pair of frightened eyes and a bloody hole in his throat, a sharp scream rang out from the crowd. Ah! Murder! Someone is dead! Murder! Everyone immediately retreated and looked at the 6 people who had fallen on the ground in horror. All of them had died in the same way. Their faces were full of fear, and their eyes were wide open. There was a deep bloody hole in their throats. At this moment, everyone's expression changed as they looked at Rich Guy. This was not a joke, this was murder. Not only did they kill people, but they also threw out the corpses so blatantly. This was a heavy blow to everyone's heart. Those who had the mentality of watching a show from the other restaurants were now drenched in cold sweat. Chapter 222. This Have Money Come restaurant was making so much money that they were naturally jealous. Originally, they wanted to sneak into the restaurant to see if they could steal the recipe. But now, they didn't even dare to think about it. Look at them, they had just killed someone. It was fine if they had broken their arms and legs, but they had just brazenly killed someone in front of so many people. Once they thought of this, even if they were given 100 times more courage, no one would dare to have any ideas about come rich. Now, everyone was waiting to see how the officials would deal with the matter of the restaurant. Everyone stood in place and waited. No one left. The officials quickly brought a large group of people over. Looking at their aggressive manner, it was obvious that they were here to arrest people. Since they dared to kill people in front of the emperor, and in such an arrogant manner, the officials wouldn't be able to intimidate others if they didn't use this kind of momentum. However, after the officials stormed into the restaurant, they suddenly retreated in a single file after a quarter of an hour. The faces of the people who had retreated were somewhat pale. They bowed towards the restaurant again and again before taking the 6 corpses away with a pale face. They left just like that. Everyone was instantly frightened and looked at the restaurant's entrance in disbelief. The officials actually left so easily. Moreover, from the looks of it, that person seemed to be very afraid of the restaurant. It was likely that the person behind this restaurant wasn't simple. Outside, rumors were spreading everywhere. Pairs of eyes were staring at Have Money Come restaurant. On the 2nd floor of the restaurant, the culprit was leisurely drinking tea. Xing Er was beside him, looking at Jing Yu with a burning gaze. His eyes were filled with scrutiny. Boss. Boss. Shen Yuqing rushed in and looked at Jing Yu excitedly. Boss, the officials really retreated. Did they say what I said? Jing Yu put down the teacup in her hand and raised her eyebrows at Shen Yuqing. Yes, this lowly one said that it was a vendetta in the Jianghu and had nothing to do with us. I even took out this jade pendant. When the officials saw it, they really retreated. Shen Yuqing looked at Jing Yu excitedly. That's right. Jing Yu curved her eyebrows and smiled. Keep the jade pendant. Verify the statements of everyone in the restaurant. Tell everyone that it was a vendetta in the Jianghu and that our restaurant was only involved in this matter. As for the rest, I will take care of it. Yes, this lowly one understands. Shen Yuqing replied excitedly. His eyes were filled with admiration. Originally, Shen Yuqing thought that the murderer would be arrested by the authorities. He didn't expect that the person would be sent away with just a few words by the jade pendant. This really surprised Shen Yuqing. Now, Jing Yu's image in Shen Yuqing's heart was incomparably high. Putting aside the fact that she was able to open a restaurant, Shen Yuqing still broke out in a cold sweat when he thought of her fierce killing of the ruffians. Now that she was still safe and sound after killing the ruffians, how could he not be impressed by her ability? Jing Yu leisurely ate the snacks. Shen Yuqing had already left. Jing Yu smiled and looked at Xing Er. Don't you send news to Xiao Chen every day? Send this news to him as well. Xing Er was slightly shocked. How did Jing Yu know that he sent news to his master every day? Chapter 223. Xing Er was slightly shocked. How did Jing Yu know that he was sending messages to his master every day? Today, I am using the name of the 9th Empress. With his abilities, it shouldn't be hard to settle this matter, right? Jing Yu smiled as she looked at Xing Er. The government can settle it, but with the emperor, it might be a bit difficult. Xing Er pursed his lips tightly as he replied. Jing Yu replied faintly. I'll go to the emperor's side. What? Xing Er paused and looked at Jing Yu in confusion. I've already leaked the news that I am managing this restaurant to the palace. Xiao Chen is not in the palace. If nothing unexpected happens, there will be an imperial edict summoning me into the palace tomorrow morning. Jing Yu shrugged nonchalantly and said with a smile, I caused this trouble, so I'll take care of it myself. Xing Er's eyes suddenly widened as he looked at Jing Yu in disbelief. I'm leaving. That little girl Yin Xiao made a lot of delicious food for me to go home. Jing Yu stood up and patted her clothes before walking out with light steps. Xing Er looked at Jing Yu's back as she walked away. His mind was in chaos. Things had already gotten out of his control. Jing Yu entering the palace tomorrow because of this pointed to disaster. His master was also not in the palace. Xing Er's expression was icy as he thought about this. Jing Yu returned to the Wangfu and continued to eat and sleep. She didn't feel as if she was facing a great enemy at all. The next morning, she received an imperial edict from the palace summoning Jingyu into the palace. This time, she was entering the palace with great airs. The palace actually personally sent a carriage to pick her up. It was clear that Jingyu didn't even have an excuse to refuse. Jingyu didn't think of refusing. She just sat on the carriage and followed the eunuch to the palace. Xing Er wanted to follow but was stopped. Only Jingyu was summoned to enter the palace. Without permission, she wasn't allowed to bring any guards. After these words were sent, Xing Er couldn't do anything no matter how anxious he was. He could only watch as Jingyu was brought into the palace. His master wanted to come back, but even if he rode at top speed, he would only arrive tomorrow morning. Could Jingyu really hold out until Xiaochen returned? He had no confidence in second Xing. He stood in front of the gate for a long time. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something. He abruptly turned around and walked towards the horse on the side. He mounted the horse and galloped away. Jingyu sat on the carriage all the way to the palace. This was the second time Jingyu had come to the imperial study. The first time she came with Xiaochen, she was nervous and didn't know any etiquette. Even with Xiaochen by her side, she still couldn't feel at ease. This was the second time. The etiquette of kowtowing was taken care of. Without Xiaochen by her side, she didn't feel nervous at all. She was calm and serene. Jingyu, do you know why I summoned you into the palace today? Xiao Yi looked at Jingyu kneeling below him and asked with a slight frown. Fu Ruoqing, who was sitting next to him, withdrew her hand that was massaging Xiao Ye's shoulder. Her dark eyes stared at Jingyu with an unclear expression. This humble girl knows. Jingyu lowered her head and said, Your Majesty summoned this humble girl into the palace to ask about the murder in the restaurant on Eastern Street. It's good that you know. Xiao Ye's face was gloomy. He didn't hide the pressure of a person of high status at all. He stared at Jingyu as if Jingyu would be mercilessly punished if she said anything wrong. I heard that the restaurant was managed by you? Xiao Yi coldly snorted and looked at Jingyu. Chapter 224. Zhen heard that the restaurant was managed by you? Xiao Yi coldly snorted as he looked at Jingyu. Yes, the restaurant was managed by this commoner. Jingyu lowered her head so her expression couldn't be seen. Then how do you explain the murder in the restaurant? Xiao Yi furrowed his brows and angrily said, Your Majesty, the restaurant was killed for revenge and not for murder. Jingyu slowly raised her head to look at Xiao Yi and said, Jianghu people barged into the restaurant and started a massacre. How could a weak woman like me dare to discipline them? However, I couldn't just leave the corpse lying in the restaurant and threw it out. A bunch of nonsense. Xiao Yi angrily said, It was clearly that ruffian who barged into your restaurant to cause trouble, but he was killed by the people in the restaurant. Imperial uncle, this commoner is innocent. Jingyu bowed and said, The people in the restaurant were all commoners. Aside from the chef who used a kitchen knife, no one else had ever touched a knife. How could they kill someone? This commoner is just a woman and would never do such a thing. I ask for your Majesty to investigate this matter. Then tell Zhen who it was, what they looked like, what kind of weapon they had, and how they killed someone. Xiao Yi coldly stared at Jingyu and said, This commoner also doesn't remember. At the time, the situation was chaotic and this commoner was frightened. I only saw a person wearing a bamboo hat and gray clothes. They used an arrow to kill that ruffian. As for how they killed him, this commoner really doesn't know. Jingyu said in a tearful voice, but the contents of her words were very vague. Who among the people of Jianghu didn't wear a cloth shirt and a bamboo hat? It was as if she didn't say anything and it didn't have any effect. Your Majesty, why does this concubine feel like Jingyu is trying to absolve herself of her crime? Fu Ruoqing, who had been watching Jingyu from the side, faintly said. Imperial concubine Yang, this commoner is speaking the truth. If you don't believe me, you can send someone to ask the people in the restaurant. Everyone saw it with their own eyes and this commoner isn't making it up. Jingyu's heart trembled slightly as she continued to speak with her body lowered. Jingyu, this concubine heard that the people in the restaurant were all chosen by you. If you ask them, wouldn't they all be siding with you? Fu Ruoqing narrowed her beautiful eyes as she stared at Jingyu. This commoner doesn't dare. If it is true, then it is. If it isn't, then it isn't. This commoner isn't speaking nonsense. Jingyu did not answer Fu Ruoqing's question and insisted that she was innocent. Xiao Yi was so angry that his face turned ashen, but there was nothing he could do. Your Majesty! A eunuch ran in and bowed to Xiao Yi. Prime Minister Manor's first master, Jing Zhan, requests an audience. Jing Zhan. Why did he suddenly come to the palace? Xiao Yi was clearly surprised. He slightly frowned as he looked at Jingyu kneeling on the ground and said, Zhen has some matters to attend to and will leave for a moment. You kneel here and reflect on yourself. When Zhen returns, Zhen wants to hear the truth. Your Majesty, since you are busy with work, why don't you let this concubine interrogate her for you? Fu Ruoqing bowed to Xiao Yi and said, Jingyu is a woman and this concubine is also a woman. Perhaps this concubine will be able to get something out of her. Then, do as you wish. Xiao Yi faintly nodded and stood up to leave the hall. Fu Ruoqing lowered her body and watched Xiao Yi leave. Then she slowly straightened her body and narrowed her eyes as she looked at Jingyu, who was still kneeling on the ground. Her eyes emitted a cold light and her red lips curled into a cold arc. She waved her sleeve and sat on the throne as she coldly said, Raise your head. Chapter 225. Jingyu cursed in her heart, but she still slowly raised her head to look at the noble and seductive woman sitting on the high seat. Jingyu, you heard what His Majesty said just now. Fu Ruoqing looked at Jingyu and said, Have you thought of what you want to say now? This commoner doesn't know anything. I've already said everything I wanted to say. Jingyu looked at Fu Ruoqing without moving and spoke indifferently. Fu Ruoqing's expression changed when she heard this and anger flashed through her eyes. Now that you've fallen into this consort's hands, without the protection of the 9th emperors, do you think you can still fight against this consort? Fu Ruoqing looked at Jingyu with disdain and said, It's said that the 9th emperors treats you differently. I'd like to see who can help you now that the 9th emperors is far away from the imperial city. Why is Imperial Consort Gui so jealous of this commoner? Could it be that you still have feelings for the 9th emperors? Jingyu's lips curled into a faint smile. Her pitch-black eyes looked at Fu Ruoqing as if she could see through her heart. The words she spat out caused Fu Ruoqing's expression to change. What a sharp tongue. Fu Ruoqing sneered and looked at Jingyu as she said, Since you're not willing to speak the truth, then don't blame this consort for being ruthless. Men, bring out the torture tools. The doors to the hall quietly closed and a torture tool made of bamboo was brought in. Jingyu's expression changed slightly when she saw the torture tool. Although she didn't know how to use torture tools in ancient times, she had heard of them before. Are you afraid? Fu Ruoqing slowly stood up and smiled at Jingyu as she said, Don't worry, this torture tool won't leave a single mark on your body. No one will know that I'm using torture on you. This consort said that since you've fallen into this consort's hands, how could this consort not serve you well? Jingyu's eyes flashed with anger. Fu Ruoqing smiled smugly and waved her hand to start the punishment. Or, do you want to tell me how you managed to seduce the 9 emperors? Fu Ruoqing narrowed her eyes as she looked at Jingyu. As expected, imperial concubine Yang Yang has married the emperor. Does she still have the 9th emperors in her heart? Jingyu sneered. Fu Ruoqing's expression changed and she shouted coldly, Torture her. Are you angry because I hit the nail on the head? I don't know if His Majesty would still be like this if he were to find out. Several palace maids came forward and clamped the bamboo object between Jingyu's chest and back. One person stood on either side of her and following Fu Ruoqing's orders, they suddenly tightened the rope. Jingyu almost cried out in pain, but she gritted her teeth and endured it. The pain that stimulated her skin nerves made Jingyu break out in cold sweat. Let's see how long you can keep your sharp tongue. Fu Ruoqing looked at Jingyu's pale face and a trace of pleasure flashed through her eyes. She leisurely raised the teacup in her hand and said with a faint smile, Use more force. You're the one who hired those ruffians, right? Jing Yu gritted her teeth as she looked at Fu Ruoqing and said, "Even if they don't die, you'll make sure they don't live and push the blame onto me, right?" Jing Yu's voice trembled as she spoke. "I don't know what you're talking about." Fu Ruoqing's hand that was holding the teacup paused as she said indifferently, "Fu Ruoqing, everyone here is your people. What do you have to hide?" Jing Yu sneered and continued, "Aren't you just trying to take advantage of Xiaochen leaving the capital to get rid of me? Otherwise, why would you spend so much effort to plan such a good show?" Chapter 226. Didn't you want to take advantage of Xiao Chen's absence from the capital to get rid of me legitimately? Otherwise, why would you spend so much effort to plan such a good show? Looks like you're not stupid. Fu Ruoqing's eyes flashed slightly. She slowly put down the teacup in her hand and looked at Jingyu, who had collapsed to the ground as if she had lost all her strength. Her lips curved as she said, "That's right, I was the one who found those people. However, I didn't think that you would have the courage to kill someone. I'm afraid that Xiaochen gave them to you?" "Huh, what do you think?" Jing Yu's fingers were trembling. Even though the torture had been stopped, the pain still hadn't dissipated. "No matter what, you're still going to the palace." Fu Ruoqing smiled as she looked at Jing Yu's sorry state and said, "As long as you're in the palace, this consort will have 100 ways to torture you. This is your punishment for seducing Xiao Chen." "Are you jealous?" Jing Yu smiled as she looked at Fu Ruoqing and said, "Jealous that I'm protected by Xiao Chen? This consort doesn't care." Fu Ruoqing's expression became angry. She glared at Jing Yu and said, "Why would this consort be jealous of a vixen like you? Torture her." Hiss. An even greater pain spread throughout Jing Yu's body. Jing Yu's smiling face instantly turned pale. Waves of pain traveled through her body. Jing Yu felt dizzy. Her two arms were grabbed and her palms were tightly clenched into fists. "Fu Ruoqing, Jing Yu, will remember today's debt." Jing Yu panted as she spoke. "You're quite stubborn." Fu Ruoqing smiled disdainfully and said, "Use more strength. You too go up as well." As Fu Ruoqing spoke, she pointed at the two palace maids who were standing to the side with their heads lowered. The two of them obeyed and went up. An even greater force was exerted on them. Jing Yu's eyes turned red, and the last bit of color on her face faded. Her clothes were soaked with sweat, and her eyes were wide open as she almost fainted. Jing Yu's pitch-black eyes stared fixedly at Fu Ruoqing, as if something strange was rolling in her eyes. She gritted her teeth and endured the pain. Finally, she seemed to have reached her limit. She could already feel her will weakening, and a faint dark green luster was surging in her pitch-black eyes. "Nyang nyang, nyang nyang. His Majesty is coming this way." A figure quickly ran into the hall and said anxiously, "How could he be so fast?" Fu Ruoqing's expression changed. She hurriedly called out to someone and said, "Take the things away and bring a basin of water to wipe her down. Also, help her change her clothes." "Yes." Everyone cleaned up the palace in an orderly manner without the slightest bit of panic. It was obvious that they had done this kind of thing too many times. Jing Yu was like a puppet, allowing them to do whatever they wanted. A cold smile appeared on her face. Not long after, Xiao Yi arrived. The doors to the hall opened, and the scene inside was the same as before. Jing Yu was still kneeling in the same spot, and Fu Ruoqing was sitting on the high seat. When she heard Xiao Ye's voice, she straightened her robes and stood to welcome him. "Your Majesty, Chinchia is useless. I didn't manage to get anything out of her." Fu Ruoqing said apologetically as she knelt at Xiao Ye's feet. "Je knows." Xiao Yi replied faintly and said, "Jing Lang, you can come in and take her away. It was Zhen's mistake." "Your Majesty, what mistake?" Fu Ruoqing's expression changed as she looked at Xiao Yi and asked. Just now, when Jing Zhan came to find Zhen, Zhen suddenly remembered that a few days ago, the Crown Prince told Zhen about the appearance of a burglar in the imperial city. The appearance of the burglar was the same as what Jing Yu had described. Zhen forgot for a moment and only remembered it when Jing Zhan reminded Zhen. Xiao Yi said faintly. Chapter 227. Flying Thief? Why would a flying thief suddenly appear? That's impossible. Fu Ruoqing was anxious and wanted to defend herself, but Xiao Yi glanced at her with displeasure. Zhen has already made a decision on this matter. Xiao Yi looked at Fu Ruoqing with dissatisfaction and said, "It will be announced to the public tomorrow. Jing Lang, you have to investigate this matter for Zhen. To be so arrogant in my Tokyo Imperial City and defy the laws, you must punish them severely after you catch them." Yes, this official understands. Jing Lang was standing at the door in his military attire and bowed when he heard Xiao Ye's words. "All right, you can take her away." Xiao Yi waved his hand and said, "I didn't think that after meeting the eldest princess, you would become friends with Jing Yu. Your Majesty must be joking. This humble subject only got to know Miss Jing Yu because of her restaurant. That restaurant is the only restaurant in the Imperial City. If your Majesty went to eat there once, I'm afraid you wouldn't be able to forget it." Jing Lang smiled faintly and bowed. "Isn't it just a restaurant? Zhen's Imperial Palace is full of chefs. They can even make Manchu Han Imperial banquets. What's so good about this small restaurant?" Xiao Yi waved his hand indifferently and said, "All right, you can take her away." "Thank you for your grace, Emperor." Jing Lang didn't say anything else and bowed before walking towards Jing Yu, who was kneeling on the ground. "You don't need to kneel. Get up." Xiao Yi looked at Jing Yu, who was kneeling on the ground, and said, "Thank you for your grace, Emperor." Jing Yu's face was pale. She straightened her body with difficulty. She wanted to stand up, but she had no strength at all. Jing Lang's eyes flashed slightly. He walked forward and helped Jing Yu up. Jing Yu took the opportunity to stand up and suddenly cried out. "What's wrong?" This sound attracted Xiao Yi and Fu Ruoqing's attention. Fu Ruoqing tightly gripped the handkerchief in her hand, afraid that Jing Yu would say something. "It's nothing, I accidentally twisted my ankle," Jing Yu said with her head down. "How did you twist your ankle for no reason?" Xiao Yi frowned. "Emperor doesn't need to worry. I'll have to trouble General Jing Lang to help this official out." Jing Yu said with a smile. "It's good that you're fine. Go." Xiao Yi waved his hand and didn't think much of it. Fu Ruoqing looked at Jing Lang's back and slowly let out a sigh of relief. Jing Yu's body. Jing Yu. The two of them walked out of the palace gates, where a sedan was prepared to send Jing Yu out of the palace. Because Jing Yu had said in front of Xiao Yi that she had sprained her ankle, she was given such an honor. Before arriving at the palace gates, Jing Yu's behavior was extremely normal, as if she had sprained her ankle. There was nothing strange about it, at least from afar. The other person standing next to the palanquin was Xing Er. Xing Er. When Jing Yu saw the two people, she understood in her heart. Today, Jing Zhan suddenly entered the palace because Xing Er went to ask for help. "Send me back to the Wang Fu." Jing Yu's legs trembled uncontrollably. When she finally walked to the front of the palanquin, her body relaxed completely. She had been holding on for so long. Jing Yu's eyelids drooped and her body fell. Jing Lang held Jing Yu, his eyes full of panic. Chapter 228. Jing Yu's eyelids drooped and her body collapsed. Jing Lang grabbed Jing Yu, his eyes filled with panic. Imperial concubine. Xing Er jumped. Only now did he notice Jing Yu's deathly pale face. "Come up quickly. There are too many people outside." Jing Zhan jumped in fright. He propped himself up to stand, but he couldn't move at all. His legs wouldn't allow him to stand. "All right." Jing Lang looked around. Then he and Xing Er carried Jing Yu onto the carriage. Only then did they leave the Imperial Palace. The figure standing in the Imperial Palace watched the carriage leave and also turned to leave, walking into the Imperial Palace. Inside the carriage, Jing Yu's small face was completely pale. Her red lips were completely drained of blood. Her eyes were tightly shut and she was unconscious. Jing Zhan looked at Jing Yu's face. His expression changed unpredictably. He raised his hand and lifted Jing Yu's sleeve. Her skin was smooth and without any marks. Jing Zhan frowned. His gaze fell on Jing Yu's face. This was the first time Jing Zhan had seen Jing Yu so closely. That face full of childishness was so similar to the bright and beautiful woman in his memory, but it also seemed to be different. He could clearly see the tenacity and decisiveness in Jing Yu's brows that Qi Yun didn't have. His wife, Qi Yun. The similarity between mother and daughter caused his gaze to waver for a moment. He looked at Jing Yu with eyes full of pity. Xing Er, who was sitting to the side, looked at Jing Zhan's expression. He pursed his lips slightly and didn't say anything. When they arrived at the Wang Fu, it was Jing Lang who carried Jing Yu back to Lian Yuan. He immediately called for a doctor to diagnose Jing Yu. The diagnosis was out of everyone's expectations. The doctor said that Jing Yu had fainted because she had endured great pain. However, when Yin Xiao checked Jing Yu's body, she didn't find any major injuries. This situation really confused everyone. However, what Jing Zhan said next revealed the reason. When they learned that there was such a torture tool, Xing Er and Jing Lang's faces both changed. Since the imperial concubine didn't announce this matter, she must have her own plans. Let's wait for the imperial concubine to wake up before discussing this. Xing Er pursed his lips tightly and looked at Jing Lang and Jing Zhan as he spoke. I definitely won't let this go. Jing Zhan tightly gripped the wheelchair under him. Jing Zhan's daughter. He didn't even have time to dote on her. How could he swallow this anger? Father, I will get to the bottom of this matter. Jing Lang nodded and said coldly. It's not convenient for the two of you to stay in the Wang Fu for long. When the imperial concubine wakes up, this one will tell the imperial concubine. Xing Er bowed to Jing Zhan and Jing Lang. The two of them nodded in agreement. They knew that now wasn't the time to stay. They looked at the sleeping Jing Yu and sighed silently before leaving. Jing Yu slept all the way until the next day. In the middle of the night, second interrogation officer was leaning against the door with his eyes closed to watch over Jing Yu, who was sound asleep. Suddenly, he heard footsteps and opened his eyes abruptly to look over. There was a figure hurrying in front of the courtyard door. Master! Xing Er was shocked. Didn't he say he would only arrive tomorrow? Why was he here in the middle of the night? Where is she? Xiao Chen's face was full of anxiety. He walked in front of Xing Er with a cold wind. His eyes were cold and calm, but there was a hidden anxiety. The imperial concubine is resting and hasn't woken up yet. Just as Xing Er finished speaking, Xiao Chen impatiently pushed open the door and strode into the room. The wind caused by his footsteps caused the burning candles to sway. The shadows of the surrounding furniture also swayed. Chapter 229. The wind caused by his footsteps caused the candles to flicker, and the shadows of the furniture in the surroundings also swayed. Xiao Chen strode into the room. When he saw Jing Yu's sleeping body on the bed with her eyes closed, his anxious heart finally relaxed. He carefully walked closer to Jing Yu. Under the candlelight, Jing Yu's face was pale, and her originally beautiful lips were also devoid of color. Xiao Chen's expression changed as he carefully observed Jing Yu's expression. He raised his hand to pick up Jing Yu's arm and lifted the sleeve of her robe. What entered his eyes was the smooth skin that was not different at all. This caused Xiao Chen to frown. He carefully tucked Jing Yu in before standing up and walking out of the room. Master! Xing Er and Xing Yi, who were waiting at the door, both bowed when they saw Xiao Chen come out. I want to know everything. Xiao Chen's expression changed unpredictably. The words he spat out were filled with a strong iciness, and there was also a trace of undetectable killing intent. When Jing Yu regained consciousness, it was already noon of the next day. Jing Yu slowly woke up from her sleep. When she woke up, she felt the pain in her body that had not yet dissipated. This caused Jing Yu to frown. She opened her eyes and looked around. It was her room. Only then did she let out a sigh of relief. Imperial Consort, you're awake? Yin Xiao happened to be carrying a bowl of medicinal soup into the room. Seeing Jing Yu, who was struggling to sit up, her eyes instantly lit up as she called out happily. N. Jing Yu's voice was slightly hoarse. Slow down, I'll help you sit up. Yin Xiao quickly put down the bowl in her hands and went forward to help Jing Yu sit up. She then helped Jing Yu sit up. Who sent me back yesterday? Jing Yu looked at Yin Xiao, who had turned around to get the bowl of medicinal soup, and asked, "It's the first master and first young master of the Prime Minister's estate," Yin Xiao said as she walked towards Jing Yu with a bowl of medicine in her hands. Jing Yu nodded her head when she heard that. It was indeed the two of them who sent her back. Just as she was about to continue asking, she suddenly saw another person appear at the door. He was dressed in a black robe and walked in with a frown. His eyes lit up when he saw that Jing Yu had woken up. "Xiao Chen? Why are you back?" Jing Yu looked at Xiao Chen, who was striding towards her, and asked in a daze. "Yes." Xiao Chen responded and took the bowl of medicine from Yin Xiao's hands. He waved at Yin Xiao before taking the bowl of medicine and sitting beside Jing Yu. Jing Yu blinked her eyes and looked at Xiao Chen in confusion. She then asked, "You still haven't answered me when you came back?" Jing Yu said as she avoided Xiao Chen's hand in disdain. Xiao Chen narrowed his eyes and replied indifferently, "I arrived last night." Jing Yu opened her mouth and drank the medicine that Xiao Chen fed her. She looked at Xiao Chen and asked, "Did you rush back after receiving news from Xing Air?" "Yes," Xiao Chen replied indifferently. His eyes were filled with gentleness as he watched Jing Yu drink the medicine. "Did I cause trouble for you again?" Jing Yu looked at Xiao Chen's expressionless face and felt a little uneasy. She pursed her lips and asked. Xiao Chen's hand, which was holding the bowl of medicine, paused. He looked up at Jing Yu and said, "I actually hope that you caused trouble for me." Xiao Chen put down the bowl of medicine and looked coldly at Jing Yu. He asked, "Who tortured you?" You know?" Jing Yu was shocked. She lifted her hand and lifted her clothes. She said, "Fu Ruoqing said that there wouldn't be any traces left. How did you know?" Chapter 230. Fu Ruoqing said she wouldn't leave any traces. How did you know? Fu Ruoqing tortured you? Xiao Chen's expression changed as he looked straight at Jing Yu. The look in his eyes was so deep that it made Jing Yu's body stiffen. She frowned at Xiao Chen, not understanding the shock and disbelief in his voice. "You think I'm lying and slandering Fu Ruoqing?" Jing Yu slowly lowered her raised hand and looked up at Xiao Chen. "I'm just asking you." Xiao Chen probably felt that he had lost his composure and pursed his lips slightly as he spoke. "Why can't I tell that you're asking me?" Jing Yu's expression turned cold. "Jing Yu, you still haven't answered my question." Xiao Chen frowned in dissatisfaction as he stared at Jing Yu. "Do you still need my answer? Why do I feel like you already have a conclusion in your heart?" Jing Yu turned her head and said indifferently, "Don't be willful." Xiao Chen frowned. "I'm willful." Jing Yu suddenly turned her head to look at Xiao Chen and said, "This is my own matter and I've already settled it. It has nothing to do with you, so you don't have to worry about it." "Do?" Xiao Chen's face showed a hint of anger. He looked at Jing Yu's stubborn face and furrowed his brows as he stood up and said, "I'll get to the bottom of this. Rest well." With that, Xiao Chen flung his sleeves and left. Jing Yu looked at Xiao Chen's back as he left and coldness flashed through her eyes. Jing Yu didn't see Xiao Chen for the next few days. However, when Shangguan Linglan and Ning Xiangyuan heard that Jing Yu was sick, they both came to visit. Jing Yu had just finished her medicine when she heard that Shangguan Linglan and Ning Xiangyuan had come. Immediately, Jing Yu, who had been depressed for the past few days, became lively again. TSK. I say, just how weak is your little body? She's sick all the time." Shangguan Linglan stood by the bed in disgust as he looked at Jing Yu's pale face. There was a hint of heartache in his eyes, but his words were unforgiving. Yeah, are you all right? Why did you suddenly get sick?" Ning Xiangyuan sat by Jing Yu's bed and pulled on Jing Yu's hand as she spoke with heartache. "It's nothing serious. I just caught a cold. I'll be fine after lying down for 2 days." Jing Yu looked at Shangguan Linglan and Ning Xiangyuan with arched eyebrows. "Just say that your body is weak." Shangguan Linglan also sat down and looked at Jing Yu from the corner of his eyes as he spoke. "Don't come and block me. I'm annoyed." Jing Yu glared at Shangguan Linglan as she spoke. "What? Did you get into a fight with the 9th Emperors?" Shangguan Linglan paused slightly and narrowed his eyes at Jing Yu as he spoke. Ning Xiangyuan was slightly taken aback when she heard this. Her gaze also landed on Jingyu with a questioning look in her eyes. Jingyu looked at the two of them and hesitated for a moment before she sighed and told them the whole story, including how she got injured. Ning Xiangyuan and Shangguan Linglong trembled in fear when they heard this, and their faces were filled with shock. "Don't you think it's infuriating? He asked me who was the one who tortured me. I already said that it was Fu Ruoqing, but he actually suspected that I was lying and slandering Fu Ruoqing." Jingyu became more and more agitated as she spoke. Her face was filled with anger. After holding it in for so many days, she finally let out a sigh of relief. "I already said that Fu Ruoqing wasn't a good person. Look, she actually dared to torture you." Shangguan Linglong's face was filled with anger after he heard this. Chapter 231. Yeah, the ninth emperors are familiar with Imperial Consort Nyang after all. It's normal for him to be suspicious. Ning Xiangyuan hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Even so, he can't suspect me." Jingyu coldly snorted and said, "Since he doesn't believe me, why did he ask? It's unnecessary." "No, I can't take this lying down. I have to go tell my brothers." Shangguan Linglong suddenly stood up. Jingyu saw Shanghai Linglong's actions and quickly called out to Shanghai Linglong, Hey, what are you doing? I'm going to take revenge for you. Fu Ruoqing actually dared to torture you." Shangguan Linglong glared and said, "Come back." Jingyu glared at Shanghai Linglong and said, "This is my business. You don't have to interfere. Don't worry, I won't let this matter rest. If I don't make her pay me back tenfold, I won't be able to take this lying down." Yeah, that's Imperial Consort Nyang. You can't act recklessly." Ning Xiangyuan was shocked by Jingyu and Shanghai Linglong and quickly said, "It's fine. I won't act recklessly." Jingyu waved her hand and said, "Let's not talk about this anymore. How did you guys hear about my illness?" "Jinglang told me." Shangguan Linglong shrugged and said, "Originally, I wanted to go to the restaurant to look for you, but I found that the restaurant wasn't open. On the way back, I bumped into Jinglang and asked him. He told me that you were sick, so I came to see you with Yuan Yuan." "So it was Jinglang who told you?" Jingyu nodded. "Hey, why are you so close to Jinglang? Could it be that you guys?" Shangguan Linglong moved closer to Jingyu and said. He looked at Jingyu with a teasing gaze. "What nonsense are you thinking?" Jingyu glared at Shangguan Linglong and said, "We are friends because of Fang Zicheng, and Fang Zicheng is Xiao Chen's good friend. That's why we are like this. Don't overthink it." "I'm not thinking about anything. If the 9 emperors were to find out about what I'm thinking, I would lose my life." Shangguan Linglong shook his body exaggeratedly, which amused Jingyu and Ning Xiangyuan. Shangguan Linglong and Ning Xiangyuan chatted with Jingyu for a while. Jingyu's gloomy mood improved a lot. Later, Jingyu and Shangguan Linglong talked about martial arts. Ning Xiangyuan couldn't get a word in edgewise, so she felt bored and left the hospital to walk around. Jingyu saw that Ning Xiangyuan couldn't sit still, so she didn't stop her. She thought that Ning Xiangyuan had been to the manor many times and should remember the way. She didn't think too much about it and let Ning Xiangyuan walk around by herself. She then chatted happily with Shangguan Linglong. Ning Xiangyuan followed the path in her memory and walked forward. She held the handkerchief in her hand and couldn't help but think of that tall and imposing figure. That handsome face that couldn't be ignored. The first time they met was here. Would they meet again this time? Ning Xiangyuan looked around but couldn't find the person she was looking for. After walking for a long time, she still felt nervous and excited. She slowly lowered her head and a dim look appeared in her eyes. Just as she was about to turn around and go back, she unexpectedly saw a faint black figure standing behind the weeping willow. Immediately, the gloominess that had just risen disappeared. She nervously tidied her clothes and hair before taking deep and shallow steps towards the figure. As she got closer and closer, the silhouette of the black-clothed man became clearer and clearer. Chapter 232. Just the sight of his face was so stunning that Ning Xiangyuan's heart could not help but race. Who is it? As Ning Xiangyuan was lost in her thoughts, she was suddenly startled by a cold voice. Xiao Chen frowned slightly and turned around. I am sorry. I did not mean to disturb the ninth emperors. Ning Xiangyuan quickly bowed and said, Xing Yi. Xiao Chen obviously recognized that Ning Xiangyuan was Jing Yu's good friend. He waved his hand slightly at Interrogation Officer 1, who was glaring at him from the side. Interrogation Officer 1 retracted his murderous aura and slowly retreated. He stood a little further away. Ning Xiangyuan watched Interrogation Officer 1 retreat and then slowly breathed a sigh of relief. Are you here to visit Jingyu? Xiao Chen looked at Ning Xiangyuan and asked with a slight frown. Greetings to the ninth emperors. Ning Xiangyuan bowed to Xiao Chen and replied, Yes, I heard that Ye is sick, so we are here to visit her. Is she okay? Xiao Chen hesitated slightly and turned his head to ask. Ning Xiangyuan heard Xiao Chen's question and was slightly surprised. A strange feeling flashed through her mind. She smiled faintly and said, The ninth emperor is standing here with a worried expression. I am afraid that it is because of Jing Yu and imperial concubine Fu. She told you? Xiao Chen frowned and looked at Ning Xiangyuan. Yes, Ye and I are best friends. This matter has upset the ninth emperors. I apologize to the ninth emperors on behalf of Ye. Ning Xiangyuan bowed to Xiao Chen again. Xiao Chen waved his hand and said, If only she was half as polite as you. After Xiao Chen finished speaking, Ning Xiangyuan's eyes lit up and her heart began to beat uncontrollably. A faint blush appeared on her cheeks. She smiled shyly and said, Ye is a straightforward person. She doesn't mean any harm. Mph. Xiao Chen snorted coldly and did not speak. Ye has already explained everything clearly. Perhaps Ye wanted the ninth emperors to care more about imperial concubine Fu. That is why she said that. Ning Xiangyuan's hands slightly tightened around the embroidered handkerchief as she spoke carefully. What do you mean? Jing Yu is lying? The person who tortured her was not Fu Ruoqing, right? Xiao Chen's expression suddenly changed as he turned to look at Ning Xiangyuan. No. Ning Xiangyuan hurriedly waved her hands. She looked as if she had accidentally said something that she should not have said. Her eyes flashed with anxiety. Xiao Chen stared at Ning Xiangyuan so intensely that Ning Xiangyuan took a step back. Xiao Chen suddenly flung his sleeves and left, bringing with him a wave of suppressed anger. Xingyi looked at the angry Xiao Chen leaving and his expression changed slightly. He turned his head and looked meaningfully at Ning Xiangyuan. Ning Xiangyuan's heart skipped a beat when she saw Xingyi's gaze. She lowered her eyes. Jingyu was saying goodbye to Shangguan Linglan when she saw Ning Xiangyuan walk in. She paused for a moment before Shangguan Linglan looked at Ning Xiangyuan reproachfully and said, I thought you got lost in the palace and was about to send someone to look for you. Where did you go and why did you take so long to come back? It's nothing. I just looked around. It's all Ye's fault. This palace is too big. It took me half a day to walk back. Ning Xiangyuan looked at Jingyu reproachfully as she spoke. It's not my fault. You should go and reason with Xiao Chen. Jingyu shrugged innocently. Ning Xiangyuan suddenly heard Jingyu say Xiao Chen's name and her heart trembled. She said uncomfortably, Ye, don't tease me. I wouldn't dare to confront the ninth emperors. Chapter 233. Ye, don't tease me. How would I dare to confront the ninth emperors? Ha. Shangguan Linglan laughed. All right, it's getting late. We'll head back first. We'll visit you another day. All right, let Yin Xiao send you off. Jingyu leaned against the side of the bed and watched the two of them walk away with a smile. She slowly relaxed her body. Although she was happy, this also made Jingyu feel a little tired. After drinking the medicine and eating some food, Jingyu fell asleep again. While Jingyu was recuperating, Xiao Chen came once. Originally, Jingyu's anger had dissipated by quite a bit. However, she didn't expect Xiao Chen's aggressive words the moment he came. It was as if he was certain that Jingyu was lying to him. This made Jingyu choke with anger. After 10 days, Jingyu finally recovered. Once Jingyu could walk again, she couldn't stay in the Wangfu any longer. She casually grabbed a few clothes and walked out of the Wangfu towards Qianlai restaurant. Shen Yuqing had been busy with the reopening of the restaurant for the past few days. Today, when he saw Jingyu appear in front of everyone in one piece, he let out a sigh of relief. He knew that the crisis of the restaurant had passed. However, when he saw that Jingyu was actually going to sleep in the private room, he was shocked. But Shen Yuqing looked at Jingyu, who was sitting and eating, then looked at the space separated by a screen. He frowned slightly and asked Jingyu, "Were you chased out of the Wangfu by the 9th emperors?" Fifth. Jingyu was so agitated that she spat out everything in her mouth. She stared at Shen Yuqing and said, "It's this lady who doesn't want to stay in his Wangfu. What do you mean by chased out? Do you know how to speak? I've raised you for so long for nothing." Yes. It was a slip of the tongue. Shen Yuqing was drenched in cold sweat as he patted his mouth. "Go about your business." Jingyu rolled her eyes and said, "Now that we have the deterrence of this incident, no one will dare to do anything to our restaurant. This will save us a lot of trouble. It's a good time to develop vigorously. Whether this restaurant can make money or not depends on you. Don't worry, boss. By the end of the year, I will definitely double your capital." Shen Yuqing smiled and patted his chest. "Yo, you sure talk big." Jingyu grinned and said, "If you can double the capital, I will give you 20% of the profits." "Boss, that's a deal." Shen Yuqing's eyes lit up with excitement. "A gentleman never goes back on his word," Jingyu said as she slapped the table. "Ha! Then boss will have to pay a big price this time." Shen Yuqing's eyes curved into crescents as he smiled. The restaurant opened without a hitch. Not only did they not lose any customers after this incident, many high-ranking officials and nobles came to know about the restaurant. They all wanted to see the owner behind the restaurant, but how could Jingyu let them see her? Jingyu either stayed in her private room or went to the kitchen to eat and drink. 5 to 6 days passed in a row. She was free and happy every day. On the 7th day, Jingyu was eating snacks in her private room when the door to her private room was knocked open with a bang. "What are you doing here?" Jingyu was slightly taken aback. She looked at Xiao Chen, who was standing in front of her private room with a gloomy expression, and said indifferently, "Come back to the prince's mansion with me." Xiao Chen did not say anything else and went forward to take Jingyu's hand. "I'm not going back." Jingyu dodged. Chapter 234. I'm not going back. Jingyu dodged. Jingyu, have you caused enough trouble? Xiao Chen looked coldly at Jingyu, his eyes filled with anger. What about me? We're not even married yet, so why should I listen to you? Jingyu glared back at Xiao Chen, her aura not losing to Xiao Chen in the slightest. Don't cause trouble without reason. Xiao Chen took a deep breath, hating Jingyu for not listening to him. She challenged his authority again and again, making Xiao Chen feel annoyed for the first time. If you think I'm causing trouble without reason, then go find someone else. Why are you staring at me? Jingyu waved her hand indifferently, her words causing Xiao Chen's aura to become even colder. Xiao Chen tried hard to take a deep breath, suppressing the rising anger in his heart, and glared at Jingyu. Do you think this king can't do without you? Xiao Chen smiled disdainfully, coldly looked at Jingyu and said, There will be a day when you'll beg me to let you go home. Is that so? Then we'll see. Jingyu sneered, not wanting to back down. Xiao Chen's face was ashen, and he flung his sleeves and left. His anger caused everyone in the restaurant to tremble. After Shen Yuqing sent Xiao Chen away, he hurriedly ran into Jingyu's private room. Seeing Jingyu still eating and drinking, he hurriedly said, My great aunt, what did you do to the 9th emperors? Didn't you see? He was chased away by my scolding. Jingyu shrugged. Boss, that's the 9th emperors. Shen Yuqing's body trembled violently. Just as he was about to continue speaking, Jingyu raised her hand and interrupted him. That's my business. Just take care of the restaurant. I'm going out for a walk. Jingyu stood up and walked past Shen Yuqing. She walked aimlessly on the street. After so many days, Jingyu was very familiar with the streets. He was no longer like when he had just arrived, where he had to find his way all day long. The restaurant's profits were good, and the renovation of the brothel finally began. Jingyu walked to a shady area and sat down. Below her feet was a gurgling river. Jingyu stared at the river below her feet, lost in thought. She wondered when the brothel would be completed. It should be open before the end of the year. As long as the restaurant didn't cause any more trouble. Jingyu frowned and let her imagination run wild. Suddenly, she felt a gust of wind behind her. She swung her legs and kicked hard. Using her hands as support, she flipped over and stood on top of the stone dam. She looked at the figure that had been kicked back a few steps by her. "Why you here?" Jingyu blinked and looked at the charming man standing in front of her. Her eyebrows twitched violently. "This young master has been here for a long time. Didn't you notice?" Hellion Theo frowned and clapped his hands. Clearly, he had used his hands to block Jingyu's kick. He said with disdain, "You really hit me hard." "That was my kick. Thank you." Jingyu rolled her eyes in annoyance. She sat down and swung her legs as she said, "Why are you looking for me?" "How did you know I was looking for you?" Hellion Theo raised his eyebrows slightly. His lips curled up slightly. He stood beside Jingyu and lowered his head to look at Jingyu. As a northern pastoral prince, why would he be so bored as to come to this place for a stroll? "And you didn't bring anyone with you? Moreover, you're as beautiful as a flower. What if a pervert tries to rob you?" Jingyu spat out this string of words, and the smile that Hellion Xiu had just revealed immediately froze on his face. Chapter 235. Jingyu spat out this string of words, and the smile that Hellion Xiu had just revealed immediately froze on his face. I'm going to castrate him." Hellion Theo's expression was extremely ugly. Jingyu laughed out loud. She raised her head and blinked as she looked at Hellion Xiu and said, "You are indeed beautiful. When you get angry, you look like a painting." "You." Hellion Theo was angry that Jingyu had described him as beautiful. However, when he looked down at Jingyu's eyes that were as bright as the stars, he suddenly couldn't get angry. For some reason, he felt that Jingyu's praise made him feel a little proud. At the very least, Jingyu was the first to praise her appearance in a praising tone. She didn't use a mocking tone. She was mocking him. "Tell me, why are you looking for me?" Jingyu looked away and looked down at the water below. "I heard that you moved out of the prince's mansion?" Hellion Theo asked with raised eyebrows. "Oh, not bad. Your news is quite accurate." Jingyu's swaying feet suddenly stopped. She slowly looked down at Hellion Theo and said, "You can't be thinking of taking me in, right?" "I want to." "Are you willing?" Hellion Theo's eyes moved slightly as he looked down at Jingyu. When their eyes met, Jingyu smiled. "You're actually asking me if I'm willing? Back then, you were the one who took me away without saying anything." Jingyu curled her lips. Even now, she was still full of resentment. Hellion Theo's eyes were tinged with a trace of a smile. He raised his hand to press down on Jingyu's little head and said, "Can I take it that you're reminiscing?" Jingyu shook her head and shook off Hellion Theo's hand on her head. She said, "Don't keep me in suspense. Tell me what you want." "I remember that you still owe me 2 requests, Hellion Theo said with a faint smile. Yes. Hurry up and tell me so I can finish it." Jingyu sighed helplessly. "As for the second request, I want you to come with me to the Empress Dowager's birthday in 5 days." Hellion Theo narrowed his eyes at the distant river and said with arched eyebrows, "What?" Jingyu jumped up when she heard this. She stood up and looked at Hellion Theo at the same level as she said, "Are you kidding me? You want me to go to the palace with you? Empress Dowager's birthday? Isn't this a scam?" "I'm not joking." Hellion Theo shrugged and said, "In any case, you won't be going with Xiaochen. Why don't you come with me and have some fun?" "I don't like to have fun. You should find someone else." Jingyu quickly shook her head and jumped off the stone dam. "It's just a birthday. This is a request. If you don't go, I don't know what this request will make you do in the future." Hellion Theo looked at Jingyu, who was about to leave, and said calmly, "The emperor has seen my face before. It's the 9th imperial concubine." If I follow you into the palace, would I be seeking death? Jing Yu glared at Hellion Theo and said shamelessly, if you want to die, go find a rope and hang yourself. This lady hasn't lived long enough yet. I won't accompany you. It's just a face. Hellion Theo raised his eyebrows and said, when the time comes, just disguise yourself and change your identity. This young master promises that no one will recognize you. Really? Jing Yu was conflicted. She wanted to repay this damned request as soon as possible, but she was also worried that she would be done for if she was caught. Of course. Hellion Theo nodded and said, this young master will definitely protect you. All right. Jing Yu gritted her teeth and said, I'll reluctantly believe you this time. You have to disguise me thoroughly. Chapter 236. I'll reluctantly believe you this once, but you have to disguise me more thoroughly. No problem. Hellion Theo smiled at Jing Yu. In a corner where Jing Yu wasn't paying attention, a glint flashed across his eyes. Jing Yu returned to the restaurant with an uneasy heart. She knew that the Empress Dowager's birthday was coming, but she didn't expect it to come so soon. Since Hellion Theo said that he had a way to disguise her, then she would reluctantly believe him. Jing Yu returned to the restaurant and suddenly remembered. Today, Xiao Chen came to look for her because of this. He wanted to invite her back so easily. How could there be such an easy thing? Jing Yu hummed a little tune as she tidied up the room. Then, she turned around and went behind the screen to rest. She waited for 5 days and finally, it was the day of the Empress Dowager's birthday. On the 4th day, Hellion Theo specially sent someone to deliver a set of clothes to Jing Yu. He said that Jing Yu should wear this set of clothes during the birthday celebration. Jing Yu didn't think much of it at the time. She even cursed in her heart. Does Hellion Theo really think that I'm so poor that I can't even afford a set of clothes? But after thinking about it, Hellion Theo gave it to her anyway. It would be a waste if she didn't wear it. However, when Jing Yu wanted to change into the set of clothes the next morning, she was completely dumbfounded by the set of clothes. What kind of damned set of clothes is this? Jing Yu stood in front of the bronze mirror and looked at the set of clothes that she was wearing. The corner of her mouth twitched. Are these really clothes meant to be worn? Jing Yu, why aren't you done changing? Hellion Theo's voice sounded from outside the screen. Jing Yu tugged at her clothes and walked out silently. Hellion Theo turned to look. When he saw Jing Yu's outfit, he was stunned for a moment before bursting into laughter. What are you doing? Hellion Theo laughed so hard that he almost choked. He looked at Jing Yu, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. What kind of clothes are these? I can't even tell the front from the back. Which one is the head and which one is the feet? Jing Yu glared at Hellion Theo bitterly. Wait a moment, I'll get someone to come up. Hellion Xiu laughed loudly and left. Jing Yu tugged at her clothes with a look of disgust. In the end, she tore off the few pieces of cloth with great difficulty and threw them on the bed angrily. Miss Jing, I'll help you put on your clothes. A pretty girl stepped behind the screen and bowed slightly to Jing Yu. Just call me Jing Yu. Thank you for the trouble. Jing Yu bowed slightly to the girl and allowed her to dress her up. Hellion Theo not only brought her clothes, but also a bunch of jewelry. Jing Yu closed her eyes silently and allowed the girl to apply the jewelry on her face. Miss Jing Yu, it's done. Jing Yu almost fell asleep when she heard the gentle voice. When she heard the voice calling her, she opened her eyes in a daze. The moment she opened her eyes, she saw another person in the mirror open her eyes. Wow, look at that person. She's so beautiful. Jing Yu pointed at the mirror and said. Immediately, the person in the mirror pointed at Jing Yu. Jing Yu froze on the spot. Miss Jing Yu, that person is you, the girl in charge of dressing Jing Yu said. When she saw Jing Yu's actions and words, she almost laughed out loud. It must be fake. Jing Yu stood up abruptly and leaned closer to the mirror. She looked at the seductive makeup on her face in the mirror. Even the childishness in her face was gone. Her lively eyes seemed to be able to seduce people and people couldn't help but be attracted to her. Chapter 237. Her quick-witted eyes seemed to be able to seduce people, making people unable to resist being attracted to her. Did you help me change a layer of skin? Jing Yu looked at the woman beside her with a conflicted expression as she asked. Yes, Miss Jing Yu is naturally beautiful. That woman curved her eyebrows and smiled as she supported Jing Yu to stand up and said, "These are the shoes that Helian Gongzi specially sent over." Jing Yu stared at the shoes that were as tall as a wooden stake, and the corners of her mouth fiercely twitched. Who told me that there were no high heels in ancient times? Then what is this? Jing Yu silently put on the shoes and discovered that they weren't very heavy. Stepping on the ground was also very comfortable. Compared to the thin heels of the modern era, they looked quite good. Jing Yu nodded her head in satisfaction as she looked at the person reflected in the bronze mirror. Her fiery red clothing was like a raging inferno. The cream-colored girdle was adorned with sparkling gold jewels, and the cuffs and collar were all cream-colored tassels. What clothes are these? How come I've never seen them before? Jing Yu raised her arm and asked in confusion. This servant also doesn't know. The woman lowered her head and didn't say anything else. Instead, she supported Jing Yu as they walked out. Jing Yu didn't think much of it and raised her head to look at the bewitching beauty in the mirror. She silently sighed in her heart. Sure enough, clothes make the man, just as a horse makes the saddle. After dressing up, she was still exceptionally beautiful. Jing Yu walked out of the folding screen, perfectly satisfied. Helian Theo was practically about to finish drinking the tea on the table when he finally heard movement. With a heart full of resentment, he turned his head, but the moment he turned his head, he was stunned in place. "Yuer." Helian Theo muttered somewhat absent-mindedly, but after spitting out these two words, he suddenly came back to his senses. His gaze was complicated as he looked at Jing Yu standing in front of him. "What? Have you been bewitched by this lady's beauty?" Jing Yu charmingly smiled at Helian Theo. "Aside from your figure, everything else is not bad." Helian Theo looked up and down at Jing Yu. The other emotions in his eyes had already disappeared. "Do you still want me to go or not?" Jing Yu's face darkened as she glared at him with a pair of clear black and white eyes filled with disdain. "You really have no shame to talk to a 14-year-old girl about her figure." Helian Theo arched his eyebrows and smiled. Without saying anything else, he led Jing Yu towards the palace. When they were seated in the carriage, Helian Theo took out a fiery red scarf and handed it to Jing Yu. Jing Yu blinked her eyes and looked at Helian Theo. Helian Theo pointed at Jing Yu's face. Only then did Jing Yu understand and raise her hand to cover her face. After Jing Yu covered her face, she blinked her eyes and looked at Helian Theo as she asked, "Wait a moment, what's my name?" "Nailin' you." Helian Theo blurted out without thinking. "Why do you want to call yourself that?" Jing Yu asked, blinking her eyes in confusion. "It's nothing, I just thought of it." Helian Theo turned his head and didn't say anything. Jing Yu looked at Helian Theo strangely and said indifferently, "Let's make a deal. I won't take off my veil during the banquet and I won't speak. You can do as you see fit. Don't worry, you just need to stand by my side." Helian Theo replied indifferently and seemed to be absent-mindedly staring at a place. This Helian Theo was a little abnormal, causing Jing Yu to feel a little puzzled. When they arrived at the palace, the birthday banquet had already begun. Helian Theo's arrival caused quite a stir. After all, Helian Theo's identity wasn't simple. Helian Theo's face couldn't be ignored, let alone his identity. Chapter 238. Helian Theo's face wasn't something that could be ignored, not to mention his status. Therefore, Jing Yu, who was standing next to Helian Theo, naturally received the attention of the crowd. Helian Theo was dressed in a dark purple robe. It was clearly a very majestic outfit, but when he put it on, coupled with his face, it inexplicably made him look even more seductive. The red mole under his eye appeared even more seductive. The 9th Emperor has arrived. Just as Helian Theo was about to step forward, an announcement suddenly came from behind him. Helian Theo stopped in his tracks and turned around to look. Jing Yu naturally wouldn't leave on her own. She quietly stood next to Helly and Theo and calmly looked towards the entrance. Under everyone's expectant gazes, a man in a black brocade robe slowly walked into the hall. Beside him was a gentle and delicate woman. Jing Yu's eyes widened slightly. She looked at the woman standing next to Xiao Chen with a faint blush on her face. Her heart skipped a beat and she unconsciously clenched her fists. How could it be? Ning Xiangyuan? The 9th Emperor's, what a coincidence! Helly and Theo took a small step forward and stood next to Xiao Chen. He glanced at the person next to Xiao Chen and said with a smile, "This doesn't seem to be the 9th imperial concubine chosen by the 9th Emperors, Jing Yu, right? Does this king need to report to you who he wants to bring to the banquet?" Xiao Chen coldly glanced at Helly and Theo. His icy gaze swept past Jing Yu's face. That gaze was like looking at a stranger, causing Jing Yu's body to stiffen. This was the first time she realized that in Xiao Chen's eyes, the feeling of looking at a stranger made her feel as if she had fallen into an ice cellar. Helly and Theo chuckled and turned his gaze to the woman next to Xiao Chen. He arched his eyebrows and said, "This beautiful lady, aren't you going to introduce yourself?" This humble woman, Ning Xiangyuan, greets 5th Prince Hellian. Ning Xiangyuan was dressed in a bright green palace dress and had a golden hairpin in her hair. She bowed slightly towards Helly and Xiao in an extremely appropriate manner. Her every movement carried the unique gentleness and beauty of a woman. Her gentle and moving appearance was truly likable. "You must be the daughter that Ning mentioned. This prince has heard a little about you." Helly and Theo smiled faintly and looked at Xiao Chen, then looked at Ning Xiangyuan and said, "I heard that you are a close friend of the 9th imperial concubine, Jing Yu. Today, you actually came to attend the birthday banquet together with the 9th emperors. It seems like the 9th imperial concubine asked you to come." Ning Xiangyuan's expression changed slightly. She shrunk back and lowered her head. "Helly and Theo, this king is here to celebrate the Empress Dowager's birthday. He is not here to listen to you. Move aside." After speaking, Xiao Chen did not look at Helly and Theo again. He directly led Ning Xiangyuan past Helly and Theo and walked forward. Helly and Theo turned sideways and looked at Xiao Chen's impatient expression with a smile in his eyes. Was this trip worth it? Helly and Theo smiled and looked sideways at Jing Yu as he asked. Jing Yu smiled faintly under her veil and lowered her eyes. When she opened them again, they were calm. She followed behind Helly and Theo and went forward to celebrate the Empress Dowager's birthday. In any case, no one knew who she was, so there was no need to care about etiquette. She just casually bowed. "This young lady is?" As Helly and Theo offered his birthday congratulations, Jing Yu, who was standing beside Helly and Theo, attracted everyone's attention. "She is my favorite concubine. Her name is Nailan Yu." Helly and Theo straightened his body and looked at the Empress Dowager sitting on the throne. When Helly and Theo finished speaking, several people's expressions changed. Jing Yu secretly ridiculed in her heart. "You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.